All right, we are going to get started with a Dominating Blow Guardian run with commentary to Act 10. So our minion setup that we're eventually going to go for is going to be the Dominating Blow minions, Herald of Purity with Summon Phantasm, Summon Carrion Golem, and Summon Holy Relic, as well as the 2 Templar Ascendancy minions with Elemental Relics and the Sentinel of Radiance. The first thing we're going to do is we'll talk about how we're going to level the Templar. Essentially, we're going to level the Templar using two-handed attacks from 1 to 28, and then obviously from 28 onwards, we'll also use two-handed attacks with Dominating Blow. From 1 to 12, we'll use Frostblades for clear. From 1 to 12, we'll use Spectral Throw for single target, and then at 12 to 28, we'll switch to Spectral Helix. There are other options available for you to use. At level 4, you could just level from 4 to 28 with Smite. Or at level 12, you could use Sunder until 28. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you approach this. Now, I should mention that in 328, Holy Strike will be a gem. However, I don't account for or plan for that because until I've actually played a gem and see how it feels, I just really can't in good faith recommend it. If you wanted to try it, no problem, right? It should be an easy swap out for Smite, for example, if you choose that leveling method. Here, we're going to use Frostblades and Spectral Throw from 1 to 12. And then Spectral Helix at 12 to 28. So we're going to mule a Ranger, and the reason why we mule a Ranger is Templar does not get access to any green support gems until Clean Strike in Act 2. This is a bit of a bummer because momentum and faster attacks are pretty essential gems for leveling any sort of like two-handed attack build. And Templar won't really have any access to faster attacks until Library Lily, but instead what we can do is we can mule momentum from Ranger. We're also going to want to buy a second momentum, so we'll save a Wisdom Scroll in addition to the one we get on the beach for the free to buy it from the vendor, so we will mule over 2 momentums to our Ranger, or to our Templar, excuse me. In this first buy, I'm going to take Frostblades from the vendor, and then I'm also going to be looking for at least 1 red-green link, so I have a setup for Frostblades Ancestral Call. And then I'll save 1 Wisdom, as I mentioned, to buy a second momentum. So let's check the vendor. We want a red-green somewhere. We see one here on the chess piece. We'll take that. And then we got a red-red-blue, a couple red-red-blues here. We'll take one there, and then we'll save our last wisdom for this second momentum.
While we live, we are blessed.
And we'll mule everything over now. And then, so I'm feeling pretty good about what I have right now. For the sort of first town, the things I still need to get is I need to get another green socket somewhere for Spectral Throw. We don't have access to that yet, and typically I won't buy Spectral Throw until I do the first town after you do Hail Rake in the Mudflats area, as it's not needed until then. Essentially, you just want Spectral Throw by the time you go to do Dweller. And you definitely want it for Brutus, but we're not there yet, so, you know, we'll try and maybe get that a little later. But in terms of what I'm looking for in this buy, I'd like to get a two-handed weapon first, with priority going towards a Stone Axe, Gnarled Branch, a Corroded Blade, and then finally a Driftwood Maul. Also, you know, I usually like to get some sort of damage supplement if my Wisdom Scroll situation's looking good, so I'll often buy a Rustic Sash. We get an Iron Ring off the rip, that's good. We're going to save these Templar starting maces to level up stuff in the offhand as needed. We'll go ahead and buy a Rustic Sash, especially since we got a two-handed weapon drop from Hillick. So we can avoid some bad RNG outcomes at the vendor if needed.
Fine work.
We will still probably prefer to get a Stone Axe if at all possible. One's available, so I will go ahead and buy that. And then I will sell some stuff to be able to afford that red, blue, green pair of boots. So just looking at everything we have right now, leaving town, we have a two-handed weapon, which is great. Gives us damage to help clear mudflats. We have at least one red-green for our frost blades. And then we have a pair of 3-link boots, and those boots will eventually house our spectral throw setup. If you have the option of only having one 3-link and you have spectral throw and ancestral call, I would put spectral throw so long as you have space elsewhere for ancestral call frost blades, because pretty much all frost blades needs in Act 1 is ancestral call to help it clear. Otherwise, it's good to go. So in this first little segment here, we are looking to hit about level 3 3/4 in mudflats. The reason for this is that to hit 4 by the time we complete Tidal Island, we want to get about that high in mudflats because Tidal Island can be inconsistent with XP. The Hailwreck area typically has about 1/4 of a level of XP, so getting to about 3 3/4 here is very helpful. And the reason why we want to hit 4 by the time we're done with Tidal is it's a lot easier to slot in gems, level 4 gems in town or at the start of Submerge, rather than trying to do it in Submerge after you've dinged 4 for the first time. So ideally I'd like 2 wisdoms when I return to town for the after Tidal. Right now I don't have any, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get any. I only have 3 transmute shards, which can make, 3 wisdom scraps. Okay, it's not great. So we'll have to see how we can get 2 more wisdom scrolls. What we can do is we can sell that portal scroll we get. You don't really need it for Submerge. It's nice to have. It saves a little bit of time, but it's not critical. So we might sell that, and then we'll sell a couple items that we get from Hailwreck, and we should be able to get 2 wisdom scrolls. What we're going to do with those 2 wisdom scrolls is buy Spectral Throw and Decoy Totem from the vendor. We'll take Ancestral Call as our quest reward, and then from the other vendor, Tarkley, we'll take Summon Holy Relic and Frostblink as our rewards. Getting Spectral Throw with Decoy Totem is important because Decoy Totem can help you position Spectral Throw such that you'll get a triple hit on minions or mobs rather than a double hit. So we got a nice RNG Scroll of Wisdom there, which means we should be able to forward everything with just selling a couple things rather than selling the Portal Scroll we just picked up.
I'd almost...
Okay, we will sell that. We sell this stuff, and then we have what we were looking for: Spectral Throw, Decoy. We're gonna keep this around. We're gonna do a 3-to-1 recipe on the life flasks. I didn't mention this before, but you should always transfer those over from the mule exactly for that reason, so we can do that 3-to-1 recipe that we did. One of the important things with this run in general is trying to have flexibility and knowledge of how to adjust your circumstances in like what sockets that you have. So for example, I have that red, blue, green pair of boots, and I have Spectral Throw. What I can do to get that 3-link filled out is I can do something like Chance to Bleed, Prismatic Burst. I can do Added Fire, Added Lightning, Added Fire, Summon Phantasms. It's very important in the course of this particular run to always have a good idea of what flexibility you want. There's only a few set things in this run that we're going to adhere to. One, we'll have a Herald of Purity linked with a Summon Phantasm. We'll have Dominating Blow linked with a Melee Splash. We'll have Leap Slam linked with faster attacks. And eventually later, once we get access to Library and Lily, Library, we will have Blood Rage and Poacher's Mark. Everything else after that is pretty flexible in what you do in terms of your links. So in terms of ledge, I like to be about level 7 by the time I'm leaving ledge and entering the climb. To do this, I'm going to go down the Goat's Pathing. It's a little longer in most layouts. It's not always, but it is in the majority of them. But the Goat's Path has more XP and more mob density than the outer path along the coastline. So we'll go down this way just to ensure that our XP hits the breakpoints that we want. So speaking of XP breakpoints, let's talk about what we're looking for. So by the time we return from killing Dweller, we want to be about level 8, starting lower prison. There's a couple benefits for this. One, we can equip level 8 weapon bases. So for example, like a longsword or tribal maul, which will give us a power spike. So that's the next thing that I'm going to be looking to do actually, is figure out how to get a level 8 or 9 weapon. Jade Chopper and Staff require level 9. The Axe and Mace require level 8. Should also mention that we're going to have attribute issues in this run with strength for a little while, so we're also going to be looking to pick up a heavy belt at some point to help address that, and we'll use Jade Amulets to help us address our dex issues. I'm just going to set up one of these red, blue, green links with my movement skill and a Frostblink, and I'll have that set up. I'll allocate some passives here since I forgot. I am level 7 in some change, so I actually ended up over XPing in the goats area. That is okay. The climb is pretty dangerous, so it's good if you can avoid XPing at all in there, if at all possible, but a lot of times I'll typically end up getting around a half a level in there, just because I might end up a little low from ledge. Make sure everything is on attack without moving. There's a solid chance you're going to see me forget to summon my Holy Relic, like, a lot in the early portions of this act. Don't be like me. Have a better uptime of Relic. It is nice because it does provide you with some life regen early, which is beneficial in terms of sustaining stuff outside of flasks. Although it only provides that life regen if you've hit something recently. We're going to keep this topaz, this burning arrow gem around, and the reason why we do that is we can use it with an iron ring later for a topaz ring recipe. If I ever end up with a couple iron rings, what I'd like to do is have a blue gem and a green gem around so I can do a sapphire and then a topaz ring recipe in that order of preference. And with those rings, I will actually craft added fire resistance sometime in Act 2 if I have spare transmutes. If I don't have spare transmutes, I don't worry about crafting fire resistance until later. So we mentioned decoy totem is important for trying to set up a triple hit with spectral throw. To understand how you set up the triple hit, it's functionally this. You want to get your spectral throw to stall out about your character width behind whatever you're trying to spectral throw. So you'll see sort of with Dweller, as I point this out, how I'm going to try and set this up. Now with Dweller, what I'm going to do first is I'll put a decoy totem down, and then I'll use my frost blades to clear some of the little riffraff with him. And then I'll reposition, and I'll try and get my thing to stall out about a character width behind Dweller. So as I adjust, like my character width behind Dweller here, and that'll allow you to get a triple hit. Spectral Throw can be very, very strong if you are able to consistently do that. Decoy Totem helps with that. We'll take added fire damage from this reward. We will sell some stuff. We can put our added fire damage on our Spectral Throw, and then we can buy another gem. So I mentioned you could use Summon Phantasms. It's good to grab one of those anyways to level in the offhand, and then we can use something like added lightning damage. I only have one transmute, and with that I would prefer to instead try and buy a longsword and use an essence on it to get it upgraded, so I'll just get prismatic burst for now. We don't see any longswords, and we're level 8. We can go gamble one from the vendor. Let's see if we get lucky. We don't. One more try, and we get lucky on the second one. Eventually, what we can do with that prismatic burst is get rid of it. For example, once we switch to Spectral Helix in Act 2, eventually we'll get living lightning support. We could put that there instead, or we could put the phantasms that we picked up. Prismatic burst is not really that great of a support, but like it's okay enough for some supplemental damage for now for our single target scenarios. And then you'll see that we have some dex issues with that longsword. We will just equip take the Dex, attack speed, and accuracy nodes that are right under Templar. Those are some of the best nodes actually in the game for speedrunning because it provides so much benefit. It gives you an attribute that you don't really have access to. It gives you attack speed. And if you're playing like an attack build, it gives you accuracy. So those nodes are an always take, pretty much on almost any Templar build, because you'd want them for the attack speed, and then the Dex is always nice anyways. The reason why you want them for the attack speed on pretty much any leveling Templar is you're going to be using Shield Charge or Leap Slam. Alright, so the next breakpoint that I'm looking to get is about 9.25 for Brutus. The reason we want 9.25 is we get some extra passive points, but it'll allow you to level up your level 4 gems again. That's not super relevant here since the only level 4 gem we have that we care about that does like stuff that's relevant for us right now is Decoy. That'll help because it'll make Decoy a little more tanky. We'll also get a bit of a damage buff to our Holy Relic, but that's not really like a huge deal. At least at this stage in the game. Because we just don't have enough minion investment to like, you know, really rely on our Holy Relic to be our primary damage source.
Your answer's here, heretic. In raid class.
Yo, new juice cock, how you doing, man? Alright, so as we go to Brutus here, using decoys well is important to get your triple hit going. It can be a bit weird with him sometimes, but I'll just try and keep it up as best as possible. This layout, this particular zone is really annoying for it. He's going to kill my decoy right away. Got the triple hit sort of going. I'll place it behind. He's going to do the wave thing, and I'll just freeze blink behind him. Just keep moving around and whacking him. Alright, cool. Here, we're going to pick up Leap Slam, and then we'll sell all this stuff. In case you're wondering, you can identify all those items if you want at Nessa for free, starting by the time you enter Mervale Caverns for the first time. And then after that, at least one vendor in every act will have an Identify All feature. Toddy, thank you so much for the sub, man. I really appreciate it, dude. Giga Chad. Alright, we're going to keep just going here. Ideally, we'd like to be about level 10 by the time we enter Ship Graveyard, and then by the time we exit this act, we want to be at level 12. If you don't hit level 12 and you're using Spectral Helix, it is not a big deal because Spectral Throw absolutely farms Mervale. Mervale does this nice thing of staying stationary for the most part after she's teleported around, so you can pretty easily set up that triple hit for the most part, so Spectral Throw will kind of farm. Spectral Helix, like Spectral Throw, will multi-hit a lot. Part of the reason why we switch from Throw to Helix is that it allows us to condense our clear and single target setup down to one thing. If you wanted to keep using Spectral Throw, you need something like Volley and lesser projectiles. The problem is Templar doesn't get access to either of those, so it's good to switch to something else. Whoa, 3 months up, man. That's awesome. Thank you so much, dude. Alright, so we want to check our inventory to see if we have a portal. If we do, we'll drop it at the Ship Graveyard Cave, and we'll continue on to Mervale's Cavern. We'll use the waypoint, go back to town, and take our portal. If you don't have a portal, then you just use Ship Graveyard's Cave in most circumstances. Then you'll do Fairgraves, and after Fairgraves, you'll continue on to Mervale's Waypoint. But here, since we had a portal, go back, go do this, and then be on our merry way. So a nice little tip here is if you have Decoy Totem, functionally one of the cool things is that you can prevent the freeze from the unique mob here when you pick up the quest item if it is taunted by the Decoy Totem at the time. So hopefully we'll get it as we go through here. Okay, decoy, avoid the freeze. Nice little like 4-second time save. Not super applicable to everything, but how it works. So now that we got this Dex node and attack speed node, we're gonna go to Spiritual Command, and then after Spiritual Command, we will rush Spiritual Aid. We will have Spiritual Aid by level 21, which is the end of Act 2, more or less. And that will allow us to have some nice scaling. Spiritual Command in the interim before we get Spiritual Aid will allow us to get some form of scaling via attack speed for both ourselves, like our own damage, and also for our minion damage. Okay, that mace is pretty good. You'll see here I don't have the strength attribute requirement for it. I mentioned we wanted to buy a heavy belt. This is exactly the reason why. We'd also want precision if we're not using swords. We might have accuracy issues. Swords have the accuracy implicit on it, so that will help. Now you'll notice because I bought precision, I actually made a small mistake there, and I did not buy that spectral helix I was talking about. You have to buy it for a transmute. I didn't have enough for it, so what I'm gonna do instead is I will just, as I talked about earlier, use Spectral Throw for Mervale, and then I will log after Mervale and sell the items that drop in town to get my helix. Thank you so much, Toady, for the 5 gifted, man. That's awesome. Really appreciate it again, dude. Oh. Congrats to everyone that got one. That's awesome. Really appreciate the support, brother. Okay, let's keep navigating through here. Unfortunately, this zone is obviously super annoying with a bunch of like dead ends all over the place. It's just the thing that you run into sometimes. Let's get our mace on. This mace is huge, so I expect our damage versus Mervale to be very, very strong. Typically, I like to keep Frostblades on until we get to Mervale if I had a Spectral Helix, for example. And the reason for that is that Spectral Helix is way worse against the explodey squids that are coming up in this particular zone, which is the second floor of Mervale's Caverns, versus Frostblades. A good way to get farmed in this zone to try and helix the explodey squids down because it has a delayed damage profile versus Frostblades. Alright, let's start getting things going. So as I mentioned, we're gonna place a decoy behind. She's gonna like try and swing at us. Sometimes she'll do her like channel attack, but we'll set up the triple hit and we will just start farming her. We'll keep the decoy down so it aims towards the decoy. This is important just to avoid the chill. That chill debuff early is a huge DPS loss, so if you can avoid it, that's great. Didn't set up the triple hit there well at all. Kind of have it going now. Or she's moving around on us. Thank you, Mervale. That's that. Okay, so we're gonna go back to town and we're gonna get our Spectral Helix now. We will sell this stuff to get it. In terms of the alterations that we're gonna need for this act is ideally we would like one alteration for Act 2 by the time we return from the Chamber of Sins level 2, because we're going to buy Herald of Purity as a reward. We're going to take Herald of Purity as a reward, excuse me, and we're going to buy Herald of Ash. If you have accuracy issues, you can just drop Ash for precision. In terms of accuracy issues, I typically like to be above like 92-93%. So that's below that is when I start considering, you know, switching things around. Alright, let's get off our Frostblades and our Ancestral Call, and we can sell our Frostblades at the vendor here with an Iron Ring to do a recipe real quick, which is helpful in advance of the Lightning Dudes in Chamber of Sins 2. Alright, so now we're going. So Helix, as I mentioned, is a good single target and clear option. So we can condense our gems down so we can fit more things in. Does pretty okay DPS still, especially early. It might fall off a little bit later, but for our purposes, it is good enough. Yes, playing it is a little bit awkward, but it also has the benefit of us being able to use it once or twice on a pack and then just, you know, leave while it XPs for us. One thing I'm looking at right now is my mana flasks are in a pretty bad spot. That's not going to be playable for super long. If I had a medium life flask, I'd also consider trying to upgrade that. I have a large. Basically, you want to get rid of medium flask. You want a better flask than a medium flask by the time you do Weaver for the most part, because Weaver can be pretty spooky. You could absolutely use Absolution instead if you wanted to level with minions primarily, or like that until Dominating Blow from 12 to 28. But it's a little easier, I find, to transition from a melee build or a two-handed weapon attack build into a two-handed weapon attack build instead of transitioning from like Caster, which is what you have with Absolution, back into Dominating Blow. But yeah, that's also another option. If you wanted to do that, Absolution works perfectly well as a minion and it levels up decently. But it's just a little easier to have fluidity in setup if you keep sort of the same archetype rolling for the most part, I find. Okay, we've got a greater life flask. We'll just pulse our Helix on these packs and then we will run through. In terms of the levels that I'm looking to be here, I usually want to be about 14 by the time I enter Chamber of Sins 2. And then I'd like to be sort of like a good way towards 15 by the time I'm exiting. My next big breakpoint is I want to be at level 12, or excuse me, level 16 by the time I fight Weaver. And the reason for that is it will allow us to get our heralds on for the Weaver fight. Was a little one short, needed to go one further room up. So as I mentioned, we need one alt for our return trip here. We have one already, which is great. Second alt later would be good because what we can do with that second alt is replace the prismatic burst we have on our weapon right now, our 3-link for our spectral helix, with living lightning, which will give us a little more minion damage actually, which is kind of a nice gem to use in the interim. So we will go ahead and do that. We'll take Herald of Purity here. And then, as I mentioned, we wanted to potentially get another alt, so we'll sell some of this stuff. Great. We'll buy Ash. And then we'll go on from here. To help avoid using precision early, what you can do, by the way, in Act 2, is usually a Dex Amulet will be enough to stall it out until, like, the start of Act 3. And we're going to take a Dex Amulet in Act 3 anyways, so if you have an extra transmute, grabbing that is not a bad option. Spectral Helix is surprisingly in an okay spot for leveling. It is not as strong as it was before it was like Giga nerfed, but basically since about 325, it's received changes to its effective added damage or effectiveness of damage, its attack speed benefit, like its base attack speed, and also its quality. As a result of this, Helix has about a 33% more damage buff versus what it had before, which is still way less than it originally did, but it's actually at the spot where it feels pretty good for the most part, at least early in the campaign. Wouldn't necessarily call it like a late game viable skill or anything like that, you know, just it's decent for leveling still. Okay, I want to make sure I hit 16 for this breakpoint, and I want to check my links to make sure I can put everything on. I can put both of these gems on. If I couldn't, I would prioritize Herald of Purity first. I have a second momentum that I could potentially use with Herald of Purity on my chest, so I will do that. That's again some of that flexibility I was talking about, where you want to think about what gems you have available and how you can best leverage them. So we'll put that on, and then we'll put our Herald of Ash on. Now actually, speaking of leveraging what drops for us, we just dropped 2 chess pieces that we can use instead to help get us a better setup once we can use them. We can use our Herald of Purity and Summon Phantasm on that red-blue, and then we can put something else on there as well. Thank you for the follows, appreciate it, appreciate it. You want to keep your decoy totem up here because this guy is a giant damaged butthole, we'll put it that way. Right. Lost for words at how annoying Weaver can be and dangerous. If you're in other classes like Duelist, you usually have something like Poacher's Mark where you can sort of sustain through her damage. But like, you know, Decoy Totem really helps here. The issue is that she'll shotgun it down really often, so it's kind of a bummer. In terms of the reward we're going to take from this vendor when we go back to pick up the gem is you can take Melee Fizz or Cruelty. Usually I just default to taking Melee Fizz. I'm going to talk to Helena because Helena will give me a vendor in my hideout. I have a ruby ring here. I'm going to check to see if it's better than either of my rings. It is not. I hadn't crafted on it yet. Ooh, somehow we ended up with movement speed boots. I never checked them. That's kind of funny. Alright, so after Weaver, we are going to go do the segment for the bandits. The reason why we do the bandits first is if you're not fast enough, trying to go and do the trial / crypt areas for the skill point will result in Western Forest being reset, which means you have to find Alira again or find the pattern for the zone. We didn't talk about it when we entered the first time, but it's pretty common knowledge, but I'll mention it here as well. Alira will always be on the same side of the waypoint in Western Forest, and Weaver will be on the opposite side. Now here is a little additional tip for you. Alira and Weaver will roughly be the same height as each other from across the map, within like 1 or 2 screens of difference. So for example, if my Weaver is high on the right side, Alira will be high on the left side. If my Weaver is like low on the left side, my Alira will be low on the right side. So you won't get a situation where like your Weaver is in the high corner on the right side and then your Alira is in the low corner on the right side, or the opposite side. So we still have a pretty crappy mana flask. We can go to the vendor and check that. Employer, thank you for the follow, appreciate it. Let's ID some stuff. Let's see if we can get a mana flask. Of course, we can buy one for the low price of 3 transmutes, so that means we're not getting a mana flask. Okay, we can get our Herald of Purity and Summon Phantasm support going. Also, I wanted to buy Living Lightning support earlier and I forgot about it. We'll grab that now. Okay, we'll go towards Oak. Roughly speaking, they end up in symmetry. Not always. Sometimes instead of being like a flat horizontal line, it's a little more of a diagonal. But loosely speaking, you can think of them as being horizontally in alignment with each other. We're going to put it on our Spectral Helix once we hit level 18. By the way, to be able to hit Spiritual Aid by 21, you don't want to allocate that big life node here, Purity of Flesh. We'll just pass right by it, and then after we get Spiritual Aid, that'll be our first allocation. Okay, we'll go back to the waypoint here, and here's a little trick that you can do to save some time. We're gonna just go to Act 1 waypoint, so when we log out from doing the way forward here, we end up in Act 1 town. Now, I see that Weaver is to the left there. I know this particular layout actually, so I know that I'm gonna have to travel to the south a little bit, and what you'll see, as I mentioned, like I'll draw it out for you guys. It'll be Alira will be down about a screen here. So you can see if you go across, right, from here, like horizontally, you go a screen or 2 up, they'll be roughly in alignment with each other. You have to, when we're talking about like the horizontal alignment, you have to keep in mind like sort of the general alignment of this zone, which is that it's pointing towards the southeast for the most part. instead of like a flat, straight up and down. Alright, so we'll log out back in Act 1 Town. I'm looking for a mana flask still, so I will go ahead and check this vendor to see if there's a mana flask available. Sell some of this stuff. Cool, we have a mana flask available for not a scam amount of currency, so we will take that.
Be well.
And then we will go on from here. We have one transmute available, so we will craft the better of one of our rings with a resistance essence. Or resistance craft, excuse me. We'll go back to Act 2 Town. The reason why we go back to Act 2 Town here is when we log out from the skill book quest, we'll end up back in Act 2 Town instead of Act 1 Town. Alright. We're almost 18. Once we get 18, we'll put Living Lightning on. Living Lightning is a nice little support to have rolling. Other things will outperform it, but, you know, just, it does have minion synergy, which is nice. It does do a fair amount of damage, also nice. So it's a good blue socket option. We're going to check our accuracy. We are at 92%, so I mentioned before, that's kind of getting to the point where I'm thinking, okay, I might need to put that on. Now, the problem is, I actually do not have any green sockets open for it. I need one green socket for my Spectral Helix, and I have another one for Momentum on my Leaf Slam. I want to avoid messing with either of those if at all possible. So what I can do is I can think about picking up another green socket, changing my gear around a little bit, or I can consider getting a Jade Amulet if I can afford one from the vendor. Now, I don't have a transmute for a Jade Amulet. If I had another amulet on already, what I could do is I could vendor that amulet with a red, blue, and green gem for the Onyx Amulet recipe and use that at level 20 because the Onyx Amulet requires level 20, and that would give me some dex. So, like, as I'm doing these runs, I am thinking about all these things as I'm trying to plan out how to address my currency and be fluid with how I'm moving around. You'll notice, right, like there's a lot of adaptation that goes in from run to run just because of changing conditions that you experience, because, you know, every run you do is different. Okay, I went the wrong way, that's okay. By the way, Crypt 1 and Crypt 2 are very good XP zones, so usually I like to be about 18.5 by the time I enter Vol Runes. I am already there, so that's great. But if I wasn't, you could spend a little extra time XPing in these zones to get there. I want to end this act being at least 21, and that is for the power spike from Spiritual Aid we've been talking about. And then ideally we'd be more towards 22, which just sets us up a little better for the later acts. And this is a really far fucking thing for this guy. I really misnavigated this, huh? That's right. XP. So one thing that's happening, by the way, that I forgot to mention, with Living Lightning, we do have to add a trigger mechanism for it, which is we need some form of lightning damage. So, with that in mind, we're going to pick up Herald of Thunder. That is a critical aspect of this gem. If you do not have lightning damage, you will not proc the Living Lightning weapon. So I can't afford amulet for my accuracy issues there, so that's fine. We'll just continue on, and then we're gonna drop Herald of Ash for our Herald of Thunder so we can actually activate Living Lightning weapon. For example, if you didn't want to use Herald of Thunder, you could swap to Smite right now to use Living Lightning weapon, because obviously Smite would give you lightning damage by default. Also does lightning damage itself. There's like physical to lightning support that you could take. Bunch of different options again to be able to make it work. In particular, one cheeky way of doing it is a lightning craft that you get at Piety. You just put one of those bad boys on your rings and you'll have it enabled for the rest of the run. I don't know why I'm trying to click that altar. Like I have something to corrupt. You can corrupt whatever you want there. I just would not corrupt your weapon or your main skill gem. Some people do want to get a Vel version of their main skill gem. If you want to do that, I just recommend, you know, you have a second version of your gem. You're not going to brick your gem, you just might de-level it. Or, worse, you might level it up and not be able to use it anymore. So you just want to be aware of that if you're going to use that corruption mechanism. So my next XP breakpoint is I want to be about 20.5 to 21 by the time I am leaving Northern Forest. Northern Forest is a fantastic XP zone and Einhar will show up. I think it's pretty much guaranteed. I think I've had it bugged before where it hasn't shown up, but yeah. Another thing that's nice to note is that level 20 beasts are the first like beasts that you can start doing beast crafts with. So typically it's kind of good on a league start to maybe kill a few of the yellow beasts here, so in case you don't kill any other yellow beasts in campaign, you have enough to craft bleed and corrupting blood immunity for the starter maps. Hey Xano, how's it going? Okay, we are about 20.5 leaving this zone. That is looking good, and you'll see that we are going to be 1 point away from getting our big power spike with spiritual aid. Now, hopefully, what we can get going here is a transmute to get a Jade Amulet. We probably won't get one in time for Act 3, but keep in mind with Act 3, we also get a Jade Amulet for free. So at this point, it may not be worth it to buy one and just hold out with sort of lower than normal accuracy until we get that Jade Amulet. Keep in mind, if you are using swords, we just happen to roll a pretty good mace. If you're using swords, you probably will not be experiencing some of the accuracy issues that I'm experiencing right now. We also have supplemental damage in the form of our minions to help us out in case, you know, we do end up missing a lot with our attack. In case you were unaware, after the first level of Ancient Pyramid, so on level 2 and 3, the stairs to the next level will be on the opposite corner. So if you spawn from the south here, it'll be on the north. If you spawn from the west, it'll be on the east, and so on. The first level is random which corner it goes to, but on the second and third, it follows the opposite corner rule. Okay, we've got our spiritual aid power spike. Now, one thing we need to start planning for / setting up is how we are going to afford a bunch of the gems we're going to need in Act 3, because we are going to library and we're going to need a lot of gems. In particular, we'll need 2 transmutes and 3 alterations off the top of my head and a chance orb. The chance orb can wait for a bit. So what we're looking for from library is we are going to be looking for melee splash, faster attacks. Those are transmute gems. Alterations, we are going to be looking for blood rage and poacher's mark. Sorry, we needed 4 alterations, by the way, not 3. We needed ancestral call, and then auto exert, and our chance orb will be feeding frenzy. We'll take fortify as a quest reward. In case you're wondering how you fight that boss, since I wasn't really yapping too much or talking about it there, is you are just going to stack your helix right on top of the boss and go from there. Helix will triple hit often if you're pretty much right on top of the boss, so. Oh, unique strongbox. Don't see those very often while leveling. That one is super rippy, so we're going to avoid doing that one. I don't use uniques in these runs anyways, so no real point in doing them. On the league start, I definitely do that one, though. Probably get a comb sign or whatever, but... especially on targets that are bigger, for example, like Oversoul, Katava, or Arcali, you can easily get the triple hit, or even more than that on the boss. Just sort of depends. So Spectral Helix can be a real champ at farming those fights. Obviously, we're not going to be using Spectral Helix after 28 once we get down below, but just as someone, you know, just as a reference mention in case you use Spectral Helix in other contexts. These runs are designed not to just be specific to the run you're doing, but also to have wider applicability to other runs you may be interested in. In case, you know, you catch this one, you might learn some leveling rules for other stuff as well. So with that being said, we'll talk about some XP breakpoints. Typically, we want to be about level 22 by the time we enter Crematorium. We want to be 23 by the time we enter Sewers. We want to be 24 by the time we enter Docks. And about 25 and a quarter to 25 and a half by the time we are leaving Docks, after we've gotten the Essence item as well. We want to finish this act sort of towards the later half of 29, close to 30. We will be doing Azaro and Normal Lab after we kill Piety. Now, I mentioned we're doing Library. Typically, I like to do Library before I go do Piety, just for the extra power spike that it provides in terms of XP and levels. Usually, I like to be about 28 by the time I'm killing Piety. So those are sort of the breakpoints we'll be adhering to for this run.
A dead man and a living machine. There's your truth, heretic.
By the way, Piety is a notoriously bad character for Spectral Helix because she moves around all the time and her arenas that you fight her in are crappy except for the one in Act 4. And at that point, we're not using Helix anymore, so it doesn't matter. I mentioned that I wanted to buy an auto exert. I have an alteration for it right now. I might as well just buy it. That was automation, not auto exert. My bad. So one alt down the drain. Oh, those are gloves. And we don't use uniques anyways. Those were the Shackles of the Wretched or whatever they're called. Yep. We want to buy auto exert there, not automation if you have an extra alteration that you can use. We need it later anyways for Ancestral Cry automation. We will not have an extra strike for a long time. In fact, I don't take it in the campaign at all with this particular build. I just rely on the automated auto exert to be able to get my extra strike. You could avoid that entirely if you're having reservation issues and just keep Ancestral Call on your dominating blow. It just results in your dominating blow brothers doing less damage. But on the flip side, you have more reservations, so potentially you could spend that elsewhere. In Sewers, there will always be one of the busts before the waypoint and only one of the busts. And then after the waypoint, there will be 2 busts. There will be one that's like in the room immediately afterwards. If that room is like a narrow set of tunnels, which will be 2 variants, you want to go down or to the right to find the third bust. If it is an open room or a larger room, you are going to want to go upwards to find the third bust. Another little tip is you want to check your inventory after you pick up the bus, and you want to align 2 of the busts next to each other. The reason why we do this is because when we go to turn in the quest, if you have 2 right next to each other in a 4x4 formation like that, or 2x2 formation, excuse me, the skill book quest will automatically slot in that slot. Meaning that, you know, if I had something kind of like messed up like this and my inventory was otherwise full, it wouldn't actually allow me to take the skill book, which is a small little time loss. So instead, I will just reorganize my inventory to allow the skill book to auto fit when I turn stuff in. Okay, I mentioned we have a lot of flexibility with 4 links. We can actually make this chest work eventually. We don't have the dex for it now, but we might later, so we will pick it up. And we got another 4 link drop. And this one we can equip, so we will keep that one around over the other one. And we can use the chromes that we have to get that colored properly. Now the first thing I typically want to try and get is I want to get my Dominating Blow 4 link. And there are 3 color setups I think that are really good for that. One is red, 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 red. So 4 red, and then you have 3 red, 1 green, and 3 red, 1 blue. If you have 3 red, 1 blue, you can do physical lightning or living lightning support, which we have right now, or you can do momentum if it's 3 red and 1 green. If it's 4 red, you have more options as well. We're just going to bank this for now. Once we hit level 25, we will try and gamble for our 4 links again. And so since I'm trying to get a 4 red, what I'm going to do is I'm going to gamble on a pure armor base. I have that 4 link chest already, which means I'll gamble on something else. So in this case, for example, like I'll gamble a 4 red helmet. Or I'll try and gamble a 4 link helmet, I should say. Since gambling is not guaranteed and not good for you kids. But, you know, in Path of Exile, we are the slot machine game, so... So I want to be 24 before I'm hitting docks. If your XP is a little low, to the left of the ribbon spool item, there's a unique mob, and there's typically a couple larger packs of these black guard soldiers that you can kill. Often there'll be a magic pack. Then we'll go on to docks. Hey, Scooby, how's it going? Elemental Hit is not dead. It is just not as strong as it was looking to be. The Bloodline Ascendancy doesn't work with it anymore. They changed their mind on that. Well, dead to you. Yeah, that works. So here, we are doing library, so that means once we find the essence mob and the quest item, we can kind of leave right away. If you weren't doing library, you'd want to be about 25 and a quarter, 25 and a half here. We're going to hit that just virtue of the fact that we haven't found the quest item yet, but just for reference, what I'm thinking about, I'm also looking to start upgrading my weapon. The sword base that dropped would be a good opportunity to do so. So we'll grab that and we will put an essence on there. Between the Essence of Woe and Sorrow Essence, we don't have a good option. We'll do the Essence of Woe since it's the worst one. And we struck out. We cannot fix this with a rustic recipe since we don't have one. Might as well just sell that piece of junk. Alright, let's go turn in some stuff and gamble for items. So we're going to turn in this stuff first. And then we'll set up our inventory so we can gamble more chests. or whatever we're gambling. We have that 4-link chest in our stash that we got earlier, so we're going to gamble a 4-link armor helmet. Okay, we got one. Green, green, red, blue is actually a decent movement skill setup, so I can actually set that aside, and let's gamble armor boots. Right, so I'm going to be pretty flexible with my 4 links. If I can, I'm going to preserve that because it are good colors eventually for us. Okay, awesome. 4 red boots. We are in good shape. So let's move some stuff around now. We'll put our Spectral Helix on this setup for now. And then we can put Momentum on Spectral Helix, and we'll put our 4-link boots down there. And we've got to put our Herald of Thunder somewhere. We can just replace our Holy Relic for now, because I'd rather have Phantasms with Herald of Purity than Relic.
Why are you still standing?
And we'll go on. So as you can see here, right, you know, as I'm doing all this stuff, I'm really just trying to be as conscientious as possible about the 4 links I'm getting and how I can use them to my advantage. So like with that helm eventually is going to be my movement skill setup. I'll have Frostblink, Leap Slam, and then faster attacks momentum, which will allow me to get a good amount of speed. If I have to drop momentum for something else, I can. So like for example, if I wanted my precision in right now, I could put that on in place of momentum. The other 4-link that I am looking for is I am looking for a 4-link for my Herald of Purity Summon Phantasm setup. And with that setup, what I like to do is typically have my 3rd link be a blue link for Feeding Frenzy, because they'll keep the buff up the most often of any of your minions. And then we'll use the 4th link as whatever damage gem we can fit that will work for both of them. So if we get a red gem, added fire is great. If we get a green gem, something like added cold or culling strike will work for them as well. That'll work for both of them, by the way, not just one of them. So the only gem you don't really want to level up is you can stop leveling up both your Frostblink and Leap Slam. Leap Slam just gets damage, doesn't benefit from anything else, so you can save some mana cost there. And you don't want to level up your Frostblink for the same reason. You don't really care about the cooldown recovery for it so much, which is the primary benefit of it. So we will ignore that. Alright, so now that we've got a bunch of 4 links rolling already, we're in a good position to think about start gambling on our weapons. We have a 4-link for our chest and our inventory, which we're going to eventually put on once we get to down below. We're just going to try and recolor it because it's a double red, double green right now, which are not links that are maybe so bad the best for us. So gambles are affected in campaign, but explicitly what they said is that the modifiers are affected. That shouldn't affect your chance at getting 4 links from gambles, which are the most important features of it. Obviously, you know, losing access to weapon gambles or as good of weapon gambles will be a bit painful. But really, for the vast majority of purposes, the big power spike from gambles is getting consistent 4 links rather than being able to gamble a bunch of weapons and stuff. Obviously, gambling weapons is nice, but we've been able to do that for ages. We haven't been able to reliably get 4 links for ages, though, in campaign. So that's why gambling is really good in campaign. So we're going to go do library early here, just sort of as I talked about. Typically you want to be level 25, that's when 4 links can start dropping. You can technically gamble it before level 25, but for my observer's bias, so I don't want to say that this is like fact, it feels less common if you gamble it before level 25 than you do afterwards. I believe you can gamble items that are within 5 item levels of your character level. So theoretically, you should be able to gamble a 4 link at level 20. I've just never been able to do it. So I don't know if there's some hidden mechanics of gambles early on. I know later in the campaign, right? Like for example, you can gamble item bases that are like higher than your character level. So like, you know, for example, the level 51 version of like the Gilded Axe, I can't remember what its name, I think it's a Noble Axe. Like, I've gambled it at level 47 before, and it has a drop level of 51, for example, so... Yeah, but typically, I just like defaulting to 25. I seem to have better luck that way. I don't know if it's necessary, but it's just a nice cue, because what I'll do is I'll gamble after I return from docks, since I'll be 25 anyways, and I will usually turn in the sewer bus quest at that point as well. Thank you for the follow, Jester and Mercon. Okay, we have a level 27 sword, which would be great to upgrade our mace. We've got a Sorrow Essence, and we have an Alchemy. I'm going to try and use the Sorrow Essence first. Hopefully we get something good. If not, we're going to gamble a weapon. Okay, this is serviceable, I guess. It's better than our current weapon, probably. So actually, you know what we're going to do is we'll keep it, but we'll try and gamble a sword in a second here. Once I hit 27, I'll try and gamble a sword. I'm about to be 27. Thank you so much for the follow, Zakavir. I believe that's how you pronounce that, or close enough. Okay, let's try and hit 27 here. Alright, cool. When I go back to town, we will try and gamble for a sword if we can manage. We also are a little bit low on alterations because we fucked up a couple things here. If you have excess augments, you can sell an augment for alterations, which is good. Let's go buy what we can afford. So this is what I prioritize buying from library if I have limited gems. You need melee splash. We're going to take Fortify here. So you need melee splash to make down below clear feel good. We'll take that with our one transmute. If we had another transmute, we'd get faster attacks. We've got 3 alterations, which will be enough with the alteration that we spent early on auto exertion. But we're going to get Blood Rage, and we'll get Poacher's Mark, and then we'll get Ancestral Cry. So both Blood Rage and Poacher's Mark are extremely nice to use. The one downside is that they require green sockets, and we don't have very many right now. But we have a fix for that in our inventory. In our stash, I should say, because we have this guy here. We're just going to, again, adjust some stuff around to be able to use the gems that we want to use.
Greetings.
Alright, we'll go here, we'll gamble for a sword if we can manage. This is a better sword than the one we had. I actually like that one a lot so far. Let's do one more gamble. So we're going to take the sword that popped up here. This gives us an extra green socket, so we'll see what we can do with that. We may not have to move a lot of stuff around actually right now. We'll keep that in our inventory. And the only thing that I'm going to prioritize putting on here is Poacher's Mark. You may be like, what the fuck? Why Poacher's Mark? Well, Gravicious, the guy we're coming up to, is a giant asshole. And Poacher's Mark really helps sustain against him, because he does a lot of damage. We also don't have any other sustain, so, you know, it's just nice to have in general, and it gives us some flat damage. We're attacking pretty fast, so we'll benefit from it. The reason why we use Poacher's Mark during campaign over other curses is because we don't have really any access to sustain on Templar in terms of attack leech. So managing mana and life is annoying because essentially, you know, unless we have Blood Rage up, which we will get eventually, we don't have attack leech, and we don't have mana leech at all, which is a huge pain in the ass because Alira does not give us mana regen anymore. So we just have to rely on managing our mana flask in single target scenarios, which is not fun. So having Poacher's Mark provides us with a lot of quality life in terms of sustain, gives us a little bit of flat damage on attack or hit, which will also apply to our minions, and then also gives us a chance to ignore PDR or PDR reduction. I can't remember which one it is on the gem text itself off the top of my head at the moment, which is also nice for our minions. So overall, Poacher's Mark provides us a lot of utility and benefit, and the best part is we only have to cast it once during a fight, unless the fight has like immunity phases that remove stuff. A couple fights that have immunity phases that remove stuff is the Malachi fight. Everything else, I think it actually persists. It does not persist when Innocence does its phase change. We are slapping at level 28 when we can use it, so we're not quite there yet. It'll probably be after Piety. And then we'll get a couple things set up. So you see that we have our links down there already. We've got a melee fizz. We'll put that there. And then once we equip that, we also want to find a 2 red link for Ancestral Cry Auto Exert. If you don't have 2 reds open for Ancestral Cry Auto Exert, what you can do instead is you can just manually cast Ancestral Cry. It's a bit annoying, but the nice thing is that because Leap Slam is not a strike, Ancestral Cry will not take the exerts from it. So we hit 28. You could go back to town and do the swap right now if you wanted. We're not going to. We'll just do the swap in town. In the past, I've done the swap in Azaro, because that's usually when I'll be 28 by, if I'm not 28 in Piety. And that is a bit hectic. So we'll just get everything set up in town before we go do normal lab.
Your conviction drives you, Herod. But have you thought what it might drive others to do in return?
So I mentioned we also wanted to buy Feeding Frenzy for a Chance Orb. We forgot to do that. Fortunately, once you do Library, Feeding Frenzy will apply or show up in town, so we can just buy it from town rather than going back to Library. The only thing we'd have to go back to Library for right now is to get a faster attacks at some point, and we will do that for sure. Just don't need to do it right now. So we'll go ahead and buy that Feeding Frenzy I talked about. It'll be in town somewhere. There it is. And sell that guy. Alright, we'll go pick our Dominating Blow gem up. And we can put Added Fire, which I don't know where this is. It's over there. We'll put Added Fire on there, and then we'll put Dominating Blow on. Alright, cool. So we've got our Dominating Blow. Attack without moving. And then the other thing is, as I mentioned, we need a red socket for Auto Exert, Ancestral Cry. Got that going. We can get rid of Helix now, so take all that stuff out. We can move some stuff around to make up space elsewhere, right? So for example, we could put Phantasm up here with Herald of Purity, and now we have another link for our Herald of Purity, and we can put our Holy Relic back on. And finally, we can put Blood Rage on. And then we have one more socket for our Decoy Totem. So eventually we fit everything on. We can drop Herald of whatever it's called, Herald of Thunder, because we don't need it anymore, and it makes sense to drop it here because we're not using Living Lightning anymore, so we don't really have an explicit need for it. I will still level Living Lightning, by the way, in my offhand if I end up with a blue socket at some point. It's beneficial. And now we can just start jamming away. Our first ascendancy will be the big dude, and we'll assign a bunch of these points that we have lingering around once we start the Azaro fight. Or once we're waiting for the Azaro fight, I should say. Okay, we're going to start pathing towards... we'll do cooldown recovery rate here, and then we'll start pathing towards Enduring Bond. Now, the reason why we do cooldown recovery rate is our down below brothers have a cooldown slam that is nice to have. Now this is going to be the most annoying part of the run, is doing Azaro before we can reliably summon our minions. You can see I was just thwacking him and I wasn't getting much summons until he got his skeletons out. In other parts of the run, we'll be in a better situation because we'll have, in addition to our Holy Relic, we'll have the big guy. We'll have the big guy from the Templar Ascendancy, and we'll have Carrion Golem to help us start off fights. So it'll look better than that funness that we just experienced right there. So I have another transmute already for the faster attacks I need, so I'm gonna go pick that up. And then after that, the only other thing I kind of need from that vendor is gems as needed to fill out stuff. So like if I ended up with a fourth link that I didn't have a gem for, I could pick that up. So, like, you know, something like MAME support could be good to pick up. Flesh and Stone, we'll need it for later. So, these are sort of like the plans that I'm thinking about. Okay. Basically just waiting for the skeletons to spawn so we can actually damage Zaro. We'll kill gargoyles, because why not? I always like to kill at least one. Usually I will kill 2 on classes that don't have as much upfront damage, like Templar does. Eventually our damage will be quite good with all our minions, but we're a little weak early. Because we need spiritual aid before then. You can respec it later, right? So, for example, like if you didn't get spiritual aid early, you would not have any attack damage in like Act 2. So, nice to have that effect. Also, isn't that only for the trans gem? I thought Dominating Blow by itself did not do that. Yeah, the normal gem does not benefit like that. It's the trans gem, Dom Blow of Inspiring or something or other is the one that has that. So we still need spiritual aid. Yeah, it took me a second there. I was like stun locked by that. I was like, wait, have I just been doing stuff wrong? I mean, you need it early anyways for the reasons why I mentioned, but that took me a second to compute. This is a good question, though. It's good to clarify things like that. I appreciate it.
An aspirant can afford to be promising. Our throne must...
Oh, he summoned skeletons right away for the first time. Nice. Okay, so that means we get our Dom Blow brothers up a lot faster. I'm actually going to take this heavy belt that dropped and use it to replace the heavy belt that I have. The reason for it being is that if I decide to use an essence or anything like that on the heavy belt, I will have a higher level item heavy belt, which means I can get better essence or tier rolls. So I've got a Fear Essence, which is beneficial to minions. I have no idea what it does on belts. Max life, sure, that's helpful, actually. But our belt ended up sucking, so we're not going to use it. We'll keep it in our inventory for later, potentially. We have no need for Helix anymore, no need for Herald of Thunder, no need for Herald of Ash. We actually do have a small need for Herald of Thunder until we get the Elemental Relics, in case we have to use Living Weapon again, so we'll actually keep that. Okay, we've got the big guy. And then, is there anything else we can do? Yeah, it'd be nice to have a blue, red chest, if at all possible, so we will try and gamble that on armor, energy, shield base. Okay, let's see if we can get a rare one. We got our rare there. Let's chrome it. Perfect. We've got the colors we want for that. That is excellent. We'll move some stuff around, and then we are good to go on that front. And then I'm going to go pick up the last little set of stuff that I need, which is faster attacks. And then I'm going to buy Flesh and Stone. Faster attacks, faster attacks, faster attacks. Flesh and Stone. Okay, I'm going to save one of those 4 links, and I'll sell the other ones. There you go.
Yes. Bye.
We'll put faster attacks in place of momentum up there. And we should be all set to game. Once we hit 31, we will put Feeding Frenzy on our chest. And after that, we'll be good. Okay, I went the wrong way there. That's okay. So with the big guy, technically you don't need him for every zone that you're just going through and clearing. Obviously, he has the damage transference portion of him. He taunts, and he has the RF aura, so he's nice to have. You're gonna see me forget to summon him a lot while traveling through zones, traversing zones. That's okay for zones that are more dangerous. So, for example, like the Belly of the Beast zones, Ali will always make sure he's up, and I will always make sure he's up for single target fights. Obviously, if you're going to maps and whatever, you just summon him at the start of the map, and he'll stick around. Especially in 328, with the change to him being a permanent minion once you've summoned him within a zone. Okay, I actually just got another transmute, which is going to allow me to do something real quick that I'm going to go do. I'm going to go to library. I'm going to buy a MAME support. I'm going to put MAME on my main links, and I am going to put MAME on my Dominating Blow with Melee Fizz, and I'm going to put Added Fire on my Herald of Purity links, so we'll have that benefit as well. So now, once we get Feeding Frenzy at 31, we will have our 4 links set up for Herald of Purity and Summon Phantasm through the rest of the campaign. And then finally, the very last thing we have to think about doing potentially is getting a blue socket for Summon Carrion Golem. We have one on our helm available, so that is already taken care of. So we are very close to sort of having our links in a good spot. We might try and upgrade some gear pieces with gambles later in the campaign. Maybe weapons, you know, whatever.
Delivered to this task, I will prevail.
Of course, I find the gap to leap from one room to the other, and you can't even cross from the gap room. Uh-oh, that's not good. That's right. So if you had accuracy issues, by the way, at this point, we just freed up a green socket there, so you could put that on as well. Accuracy is fine for the most part. And minions don't really benefit from precision anymore. I mean, they get crit from it, but before minions used to have accuracy. Now, as of 327, I believe the change was. It doesn't matter. Minions inherently hit now, so.
Submit, heretic!
So the next set of things we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over towards Enduring Bond and picking up that set of nodes. We can also pick up the Area Minion Mastery. That's a good one to pick up just to help us with our coverage. And then another nice quality of life thing we can pick up is the Minion Mastery for Recovery on Death. Typically, I'd like to get that going by the time I have a Carrion Golem, or by the time I'm fighting Piety and Belly of the Beast, because at that point your minions are going to start falling over to random shit unless you have that. The minions that you have to like resummon, like your Relic, which by the way I should summon again. And then because we're using Summon Phantasms, those things die to like a Stiff Breeze, so we'll always be proccing that. If anyone is interested, I should mention it here since we have a second. I did a sub 3-hour version of this run with the same sort of setup on Dominating Blow. Obviously this is commentary, so we're explaining things more and going a little slower than we normally would while still trying to go fast. But it is possible to do a sub 3-hour minion run, which is pretty cool. I thought that was fun. So so let's talk about Act 4. Basically, I sort of alluded to this a little earlier, but what I'm looking to get is I'm looking to get a Carrion Golem. You also get multi-strike from this act, which is nice for Dominating Blow. However, we will not be using multi-strike with our Dominating Blow because we want our auto-exert Ancestral Cry. If you use multi-strike, you won't benefit from the exertion for the extra strike from Ancestral Cry, which is a problem because we don't have any sources of additional strike. And it is very useful in campaign to have additional strike to start generating your minions early. In mapping and stuff, it's way less important, and you can just sort of manually cast it, Ancestral Cry, to start a zone. But at least early in campaign, we are actually our main damage source until our minions have had some time to scale. By the end of, like, you know, Act 5, Act 6, our minions will definitely be our main damage source. So we don't use things like Spectres, for example, in this run, just because the socket pressure ends up being a little too high, and I don't want the overhead of trying to maintain Spectres. If you're cool going a slightly slower pace and like reviving the Spectre if it dies, absolutely no problem in getting a Frenzy Ape, for example. But generally speaking, like, just sockets end up being a little too difficult to manage once we start adding more minions than the ones we've sort of already planned for. You don't have to keep Frostblink around, by the way. So we don't have a blue socket, excuse me, anymore for Carrion Golem. You can drop Frostblink. It will be a slight speed loss. If you don't want to drop Frostblink because you like its ability to help you animation cancel or reposition during boss fights, both which are very useful abilities, you instead, I would probably prioritize dropping the Holy Relic for Carrion Golem, and then just keeping your 4-link Hero to Purity set up the way it is. Because one of the options is just, you know, dropping Feeding Frenzy entirely or shifting your links around like a lot, but it gets annoying to do that. So we're not going to do that. Okay, we can put Fortify on. We're going to put Fortify on in place of melee splat or melee physical damage. The reason why we do that is I don't like attacking slow. That puts us in danger of dying to random shit. So, you know, when we start zones, that's when we are our weakest on a Guardian Dominating Blow, because we haven't generated our Herald of Purity bros or our bros from Dominating Blow as well. So basically, once we start to get to more dangerous zones, what you're going to start seeing me do, for example, if it's like a magic pack, I will summon my Sentinel of Radiance on top of them and then Leap Slam into the pack, and then I'll start attacking. That's not really going to be relevant until like Act 8 or Act 9, because this stuff, as long as you have a decent like chest piece in your, as long as you have like a decent chest piece, they're not going to kill you. You can also get endurance charges if you want via like Enduring Cry. Typically, we'll have red socket flexibility. Once we get the big guy, we don't need Decoy Totem anymore because the big guy will also taunt for us. But typically, what I'll do is I'll replace Decoy Totem a little later when I have more like reservation efficiency with Flesh and Stone, and I will use the defensive stance of Flesh and Stone to get some extra defense. Which is the Sand Stance, by the way. And then on bosses, if you want for extra damage, you can swap it to Blood Stance, which will give your melee minions 20% more attack physical damage, which is a nice little bonus. However, I will mention that I typically find that by the time you start using Flesh and Stone, your minions are trucking things already. So I tend to keep it in the Sand Stance version of it for the extra defensive prowess. Luko, how's it going? Okay. We will get Enduring Bond, and then the next set of nodes we're going to go towards is going to be the Minion Mastery on Sacrifice for the defensive one, which is Recover Minion Life on Death. Hopefully we will get that before piety. We should be 35 before piety, which means we'll have 3 more skill points coming in the form of the Desperate Turn-In in Act 4 and 2 from levels, which should give it to us in time, which is nice because piety, if you don't have that, will kill pretty much all your minions with her stupid beam thing. So we'll talk a little bit about minion scaling in terms of the campaign right now, since we have a second. Typically what I find with minion leveling from like 1 to Act 3 is kind of painful, because minions don't have as much scaling as other gems do at that point, so I think it's perfectly acceptable to wait until about 28 to swap to minion skills. You could do Absolution at 12, that's fine too. It does well enough. Or, you know, you could be doing SRS like early, that's also cool, it's a vibe to level with. I just think other things are faster. But by the time you start getting to late Act 3, your minions start ramping. By the end of Act 5, your minions are legitimately like a good damage force. And then by the time you're through Act 10, your minions are wrecking everything in sight. So. Easily about, so in terms of how much time loss I have, your question about doing a commentary run versus not, easily like 20 to 25 minutes. Easily. So I think it's more like a half hour, but we'll see. The goal for this run is to finish somewhere around 3 hours 30 minutes. A little bit under that would be great. Look, thank you so much for the follow, appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna take this Butcher Sword, which is nice. We'll log out. The reason why we're gonna log out here instead of portaling, even though portaling would bring us closer to the dude that we gotta sell or turn the quest item to, is because we got this Butcher Sword, which you want to ID, and holy did this thing roll well. Look at that, baby. We are very happy with that. And then we can craft something like flat lightning on it. For example, we actually didn't pick up the flat lightning craft. The only flat craft that we picked up was flat cold, I believe. So we can just go ahead and craft some cold damage on this bad boy. And if we end up with some blacksmith whetstones, we can throw a couple on there. And now we have a weapon that's essentially going to last us until like Act 8. Okay, cool. I need links on it though. That's the problem for my auto exert. We'll go from here. Put this stuff on. Oop, we can't actually use it yet. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Got too excited. And then we're gonna go pick up our carrying golem. We do need one more blue socket, and we have these gloves that we can potentially replace for it. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Since we need a blue socket and we want some red sockets, we'll do armor int hybrid gloves, and hopefully we'll get a 4-link. That works. We want one more blue socket though. Okay, that's too many blue sockets. But whatever, we'll roll with it for now. This will allow us to put our carrion golem on right away. And we are level 34, so we can do so. And we have potentially an open damage link for it. So if we had another blue gem, we could throw that on there. I don't think living lightning works with that. I'm not sure though. So for example, you know, once I get access to another blue gem, you know, I will just go ahead and throw something on there. Alright, let's go do comb. So I mentioned I wanted to be about 35 by the time I am fighting Piety again. I'm already 34, so we're in a good position to do that. If you weren't 34 already, you'd want to be 34 by the time you're entering the belly of the beast for the first time. And then hopefully you'll get 34 by Piety. Or 35 by Piety, excuse me. And the end of this act, you want to be about 36. The end of Act 5, you want to be about 42. This is just breakpoints for future acts. End of Act 6, you want to be 46. End of Act 7, you want to be about 50 and a half. End of Act 8, you want to be 55 and a half. I gotta put my auto exerts back on. End of Act 9, you want to be about 59, and then the end of Act 10, you want to be about 61 to 62, depending on how much XP you want.
I must have time to gather my will.
Alright, so I have that extra green socket, which means I can move some stuff around to get momentum on my travel skill setup, which is great. Anytime you can get momentum with least time and faster attacks, it is worth it to do so if you don't have to sacrifice other gem sockets like Blood Rage and Poacher's Mark, because it'll make you leap faster. Little tip for this zone, there are 4 layouts in this zone. You can identify them all, or at least 3 of them, really easily by looking at this entrance wall. You see this right hump on the minimap? If you have the right hump, you want to go all the way to the right to find the stairs that go up. There's one layout where there'll be a left hump, and if there's a left hump, it will uniquely identify and tell you to go to the left to find the stairs. So we had a right hump, we will go all the way to the right to find the stairs. And if we get blocked by like a lava river, we're gonna keep heading right. If we don't get blocked by lava river, we'll go left. After we get up the stairs, we get blocked by lava river, we will go right this way and find comb, the next area to combs up this way. That is a lot of information there, but... Hey Papa. Hey Lost, how you doing? Yeah, so we are using two-handed weapons just because it's more damage earlier. It's more likely to get us dominating blow minions off a pack early. Eventually, you will switch to sword and shield. I just use two hands through campaign. So, but yeah, eventually this setup will be a sword and shield setup unless you decide to do something with like, you know, a giant flat physical weapon and rallying cry. But that is not something I've looked into specifically, right? Exactly. Yeah, okay, so the reason why we use swords instead of claws is one issue with claws is that claws have high dexterity requirements that we have no hope of meeting early on in the run, okay? We also use swords because they have the implicit accuracy on them, which is helpful because we won't have RT for a little while and we want to be able to hit. And then the big benefit to using two-handed weapons over one-handed weapons early, for example, is the following. If you try and go to a pack and you have a one-handed weapon, if you don't have enough damage, your one-handed weapon is not rolled enough, you're going to have to swing multiple times. If your damage is good enough with a two-handed weapon, you swing once, pack dies, you have your minions.
My god takes good care of me. I may have misjudged that god of yours. Twice.
Okay. Now we're gonna get minion area of effect. Typically, that'll be my last minion mastery node for a little while. We have Poacher's Mark to help with our PDR for minions. And then we have later the Elemental Relics. So the next minion mastery we'll get will be the Elemental Relics one. Or the Elemental Pen one once we get the Elemental Relics with our second Ascendancy. So I did flat cold instead of attack speed because I didn't have 6 alterations for attack speed. And I probably won't, to be honest. So, you know, if you had 6 alterations, you could have done attack speed instead. Swords kind of have a fast attack base speed, so like this guy here has 1.3, which is okay. It's not great, but it's better than like maces, which have like 1.15, stuff like that. I don't typically put two-stone runs up on YouTube or things like that. I have done them in the past. I'm not doing them right now, solely because of the fact that with the Atlas changes, I don't want to put up something that may not be applicable in the sense of like how you do the progression of it. I know part of the purpose of like a two-stone run is to like show a build against content versus like the progressions portion, but you know, the progression portion of it to get up there is just as important in my opinion, at least in terms of trying to do like commentary on stuff.
I actually find myself admiring you.
I have no idea what I'm doing for League Start yet.
You and I will create the most beautiful of nightmares together.
That's a good question. I don't know when you might not need melee splash anymore. Basically, my opinion kind of on it is, if you want to get rid of it, keep it for clear and just swap it for bosses. I haven't mapped either of them out to like late endgame stuff, so I couldn't really tell you. The Ellie Hit Slayer build obviously is a little bit more untested in the fact that, you know, Ellie Hit is only really coming into vogue right now because of various changes to the gem. You know, it's gotten huge radius buffs, which really helps with its clear. It's gotten damage to its flat, like its flat damage scaling. And also, it got a attack speed buff. So, there are a few factors that are, like, sort of coming to the fore right now, which is making Ellie Hit, you know, a lot better. Obviously, Freesha 2.0 opened a lot of eyes to how good it could be if you could get a significant amount of conversion. So. And then, as it relates to this, you know, I know there are people that already have, like, down blow builds from before, like Ghazi has a down blow build. I don't know how well it maps to what I'm doing right now, but at the very least, you could use this as a template to sort of map the early portions of a down blow run, and then sort of adjust your mapping build and like your end game, you know, aspirations to like how he has this thing set up. You'll find much better or more applicable information than what I can potentially give you to that, since he plays those builds a lot more than I do.
Take care.
Okay, we're gonna get rid of our current sword, and then we are going to see if we can get a better mana flask. We'll take this Colossal. We're not going to use the Colossal right now. The Colossal is going to fill up our mana pool too fast, so... Yeah, there are other minion creators out there too, if you prefer not to use a Ghazi build for whatever reason. But like, he's just, you know, well known enough that he'll have looked through stuff for sure, and he'll have a reasonable and I think relatively solid build put together for it, especially with like progression and stuff like that. So they put out a note, by the way, about the elemental hit and the bloodline ascendancy thing. It will not work together anymore after seeing it would in the Q&A. So Ellie Hit will be less potent otherwise than it would have been this patch, but I still think it'll be pretty decent, at least for SSF purposes, you know, because that's primarily what I play.
My return marks judgment for those who hold faith.
Yeah, one singular Act 10 run. This is like run 35 in the last like week.
No place in God's land.
Okay, in terms of the skill gem I take here. I didn't end up crafting fire res there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my highest res and I'll take whatever rings that I have the lowest of. In this case, I need some fire res. So I can take a fire cold res ring here. I'll use the identify all features to save a wisdom scroll. And hopefully this will be good. It's pretty decent. I'm going to go craft a res that I need on this thing. I can craft wide variety. I'll just craft fire res. Let that go. And then I will be back in 1 second. Yeah, I have a dog. He wants out of my room right now, so I'm just going to let him out real quick. Hi, bud. Good boy. Yep, I have an Airedale Terrier, so this is him. We made a small little emote of him. What he looks like. Yeah, he's a very good boy. Usually likes hanging out in my room while I'm doing this stuff. And then, like, midway through the run, he's kind of like, alright, dude, like, you know. Let me go, like, sit in the front of the house. So he'll move around a bit.
Piety is science. The truth of this one. God does
Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it, appreciate it. Thank you for the follow, Kanaz. Appreciate it. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about XP breakpoints here, since we have a second. Typically, you want to be about level 39 by the time you're fighting Innocents. And to be able to do that, there are a couple really good XP zones that are coming up. The Torch Courts, or excuse me, the Templar Courts, which are the non-scuffed version or corrupt version of them, have really good XP. Oriath Square kind of has sporadic XP. There could be a lot of blue packs here, which makes it good, but you don't often come across them. Torch Courts, or Templar Courts, typically has a lot of density and a lot of blue packs. Obviously, the Chamber of Innocence is great, especially since there are guaranteed blue packs on the raised stairs-like platforms that you run across. And finally, if your XP is kind of cooked in the second half, like i.e. you're level 39 still, you really want to take a second to XP in the Reliquary, which is the final sort of like good XP zone. You definitely want to try and get about level 41 by the time you're leaving this act. 42 is more ideal. If you are below like 40, do not go to act 6, because your XP is going to be omega doomed and you're going to lose a lot of power because your minions won't be leveled up as much, and you're just going to continually find yourself in a negative feedback loop of losing XP, which will slow you down because you're going to have to XP more elsewhere because you're running into the XP penalty. Okay, so here, the other big thing I'm thinking about is, okay, how am I going to solve my resistances for the second half of campaign? With the way we're pathing, we have two options. One, we're pathing towards sort of the witch area right now with Heart and Soul and Lord of the Dead. There is a fantastic node down there called Practical Application, which will give you 20 strength and 20 dexterity, which will help with our attribute requirements. It also has all res on it, so it is an all-around awesome node to take. So we're going to probably take 2 points and put it there. And then finally, there's Holy Dominion in Templar, which gives 12 all res. It's in sort of like the elemental wheel off Templar start. So if we need more resistances, we have about access to somewhere around 25% all res on Tree for 4 points, which we will take that time. Take that most of the time as needed because it'll help negate the resistance penalty from Kitava. Thank you so much for the follow, AO. Appreciate it. So these are the little raised stair platforms I'm talking about, by the way. And then the Chamber Before Innocence will typically have 3 guaranteed blue packs. So that's another good place to make up a little XP. So we will take all of these to make sure our XP is in a solid place, and then we will move on.
The world must be cleansed of impurity.
We'll start pathing towards practical application. We're going to do that because our res isn't in a great spot right now. We're also going to start checking our suffixes to see where we can craft res. Okay, can't craft res on gloves. We can craft res on our belt if needed. Res on our chest. We can't craft res on our helm, but what we can do is we can use an alt to try and get an open suffix, craft res on our boots, and we can craft res on nothing else besides that. So we have like 4 or 5 places we can craft res. So we should be good without doing Holy Dominion, but we will reserve the 2 points for Holy Dominion as needed to make sure our res is all set. And so one place you can sort of make that call is after you get the skill book from Reliquary. You'll do the turn-in for both the Reliquary skill book and the Valenta Miasmeter skill book quest, which are 2 points. We can just try and fix our res first with like crafts, and if we can't fix our res first with crafts, we'll use those 2 points to pick up Holy Dominion. FaZe is another good person, obviously, for minion builds, although I think FaZe does more of like SRS stuff, or has done skeletons in the past, if I remember correctly, like lightning skellies, but that was a while ago. Yo, Sons, how's it going? Good to see you again, buddy. Okay, so we only have 2 transmutes for our crafts. We have an 2 elks for crafts, which means we can get like a higher tier craft of res. If possible, I like to avoid using the elks for crafts, for res crafts, because usually you can get by with transmutes, and you're going to upgrade that gear later anyways, and elks are better suited for other things. So we'll use the 2 transmutes we have. Now, if you need more transmutes, typically at this point you should have enough currency to actually have 7 portal scrolls. If you have 7 portal scrolls, you can sell them for a transmute, so that's another way of getting one. Because we did library, unless there's like a 34 or 38 gem that you can't get access to and that you may otherwise want, off the top of my head, I can't think of one. You don't need to do library when you go to X6. Obviously on the League Start, eventually you will do library just so you can get Lily in your hideout. But for the purposes of this run, we can just go ahead and skip right by doing Lily. If you're in a bad XP spot, entering Act 6, let's say you're level 40, go ahead and do Lily right away. That's actually a nice way of getting a little bit of supplemental XP, no problem there. Alright, we will drop a portal in the ruined square here in a second. The reason why we drop a portal is because it's less backtracking and more efficient to drop a portal here. And then what we'll do in the reliquary is we'll clear the reliquary and we'll loop back around to the waypoint there, because the reliquary is such good XP and it's not very big. We don't lose a lot of time by doing that. In terms of navigating the reliquary coming up, You can go either to the left first or to the right first. I typically go to the right first. It doesn't matter so long as you don't decide, like a psycho, to go to the diagonal first. If you go to the diagonal first from the entrance, so for example, if you were to head straight west, like across the map, like the middle west corner of the map, you'd have to backtrack. I have no idea what they will have done with guaranteed 5 links and things like that. That was a nice feature, though. I did not personally play much of Keeper's League. I took most of the league off, or pretty much all of the league off, until we got into like league start time. So I never really benefited much from it, but I like it in principle. Oh, that's cool that they mentioned that somewhere. Okay, I mentioned before we were talking about reserving our skill points potentially in case we need a craft from Holy Dominion. So we're gonna go figure that out right now. We're gonna go craft some res in places. Our lowest res is lightning right now, so we'll throw that on our boots. We can throw lightning on our chest because that's the only one available to us. Our lightning res is fixed already. And then we can take our helm off, alteration it to get an open suffix. We don't need lightning res, that's crappy, and then that's crappy. So we didn't luck out on that. We've got a bunch of chance orbs, so actually we can buy a scour. So we might as well scour it. Okay. Take that. We'll always take the granite flask, by the way, as a reward here. Let's get a scour. We will scour this bad boy. Okay, of course, it's got to be empty of sockets because, you know, we can't make things easy for people. Thanks. Let's scour. We'll Essence of Fear it. We get fire res, a low fire res roll, which is not great for us, but we'll take it. It's better than what we had. And then we need to figure out how to fix our cold res. We've got a belt here that has an open spot, and we have, yep, just a belt. So on our belt, I mentioned earlier we didn't like to use alks if we could avoid it, but our fire res or cold res is in kind of a doom spot, so we will go ahead and do a alk craft on our belt. Okay, we end up with 90, and then we'll use the 2 points that we have reserved for Holy Dominion to get our res in a better spot. And so you see here, our res is almost fixed. It's going to be a little low for Act 5. What you can do further is we have this note here, which will give us 3 more Ellie res, and we can respec that later when we get down to Barbarism. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. Otto, thank you for the follow. Alright, so we will be 2 res off cap for fire. Eventually that will be fixed once we get the Barbarism node that I was talking about. But 2 res off is good enough for the second half. That is not a bug, that is an intentional mechanic. Multi-strike does not work with exerted attacks. So anytime you have multi-strike on, exerts will not apply to the attack. It says that on every Warcry gem, I believe, that exerts. But it's easy to miss if you're not paying attention to it, so. Daz, thank you for the follow, I appreciate it. Alright, then after we get a couple levels, we'll put points in Heart into Soul, and then we'll start getting points into Lord of the Dead afterwards. Yeah, no worries, man. This game has all sorts of little interactions like that. So, for example, another one that's kind of weird you'd think would work, but doesn't, is you think Ruthless would work with the Shield Crush gem because it's a melee skill. However, Ruthless has a tag that specifically says only works with strikes and slam skills. So, because Shield Crush is neither of those, you can't use Ruthless support with Shield Crush for reasons unknown. That one makes no sense to me. I understand why you wouldn't want to allow people to use Ruthless with like retaliation skills. That might be a little absurd with how much damage those skills can do when you actually proc them. But yeah. There's all sorts of like random weird things about this game. So for example, Duelist doesn't get added cold despite the fact that it's a dexterity hybrid class. You would think that they'd get access to the dexterity gems, but nope. No added cold for Duelist. I have, as it relates to your question, Daz, about Down Below or Absolution, I haven't leveled Absolution in a little bit. I was already actually working on a Down Below run before the patch notes came out. So it was just kind of fortuitous timing for me to continue working on it. So I haven't looked at Absolution. Obviously, Absolution is good for leveling. It was good for leveling before. I don't expect for it to change with the new patch, right? Especially since it's getting buffed, right? Although I understand, I don't know if they clarified it in the Q&A today, but I understand that there was some potential confusion about whether the 40% more damage on it applied to just one particular ability or was like global for the minions. So I do not have clarity on that. Alright, so we've got our res set up for the most part. We want to be 43, essentially, by the time we're in Chiron's tower, going towards the Chiron Brutus fight. So, we're in good position to do that. This Tukahama fight is really annoying on minions, on Down Below minions in particular, because, you know, the minion AI typically doesn't like to attack the totems, and I don't have Predator support to tell them to go do it specifically, so we'll see how this goes. There are a couple fights like this that have annoying little quirks for minions, or conditional minions, like, yep, so sometimes, you know, I also don't have convocation, so it makes it a little harder to, like, corral the forces, but they're doing a good job right now. So my item filters, or loot filters, are not really set up for public use. And the reason for that is I sort of default to having a general purpose filter that works for all the leveling classes that I do, and I level a lot of random shit. So it's gonna look crazily bad for most people because, you know, you might be doing a bow run, but you get claws that are dropped and highlighted. But I know to ignore them based on like the minimap or icons that I'm familiar with, and that may not be applicable to you. So. You don't like, you know, because my filters aren't publicly available, Tai has filters, there's a guy named CDR that does filters. Those are also pretty good, or I've heard good things about them, so.
Evil has returned to this place of despair.
Down Below minions are not permanent. What they're referring to is the Sentinel of Radiance, which is the Templar Ascendancy node, is now permanent, i.e. doesn't have a duration once you summon it in a zone. So it'll still desummon when you change from zone to zone, but it no longer has a duration when it is summoned within a particular zone in 3.28. Right now it has a 30-second duration by default, something like that. Oh, yep, Gucci also has those filters. I wasn't aware that Gucci had minion filters or like minion leveling filters though, but he does have the like Act 5 80% racing filter, which is very popular. That one might be hyper specific though, but yeah, Gucci will have good filters if he has generally applicable ones, or more generally applicable ones. Which again, I don't know off the top of my head if he does.
Belief is the strongest metal of them all.
Yep. The Gucci GitHub was actually my idea. He asked me about what he should use to like upload his filters to make it easier. I was like, just use GitHub. Way back in the day. What's up, Snuggle? Bods, how you doing? I have no idea about the Glad Lucky Block Flicker Strike starter that you just mentioned. Not even like a remote clue. So I can't really answer that in good faith. Autolion, thank you for the follow. I also think the question of like, you know, what's a good starter, what's not a good starter, obviously has context, is heavily context dependent on what you're doing, right? Like in trade, you know, you have a lot more freedom to play off-meta things, right? Because you have more access to gear that can enable off-meta easier, right? Or, you know, if you're playing SSF and you don't really care about what you're playing, like, you know, you're just vibing, all the more power to you. I mean, probably the strongest amongst us are those that just fucking load up PoE and enjoy themselves no matter what they play. Those guys are the true Giga Chads. I will say, you know, Shield Crush Glad for leveling will be good. So you don't have to worry about that.
Our final crusades.
Alright, so we'll talk about some breakpoints for the second half of the cam, or Act 6 right now. Typically, we want to be about 44 by the time we enter Southern Forest, and we want to be about 46 by the time we leave this act. Now, your XP might look a little low for a while in Act 6. That's essentially because a lot of the good XP in this act is backloaded to the final, like, 3 zones. Brian King's Reef has a ton of XP, like an absolute ton of XP, and, you know, it can be a bit difficult to navigate around in there if you don't know how to read the layout, so you'll get XP there. The little gauntlet event in the beacon also gives you about a guaranteed level almost every single time, as long as you're not like super over leveled. And then Southern Forest, which we'll be coming up to in a little bit here, also has a lot of good XP. When we get to town here, since we are on a build that stands and delivers its damage via strike, we want to take the Tukahama Mastery here, which will give us some PDR per second we've been stationary. That is a nice to have. Jesus, this belt is Omega. I just don't have lightning res. Fuck, that sucks. Yeah, we're definitely keeping that belt around. And then let's try and get a different helm. We're not going to be able to roll those colors very easily, so we might be stuck with the helm we have.
Farewell.
Okay, and now, essentially, we're going to start having accuracy issues here for a bit. So what we can do is we can start pathing down towards RT, and we can put precision on as necessary. I'm going to get a little life here because my life's a little low. I can take my momentum off of my movement skill setup and put RT on, or not RT, excuse me, precision. It's a low-level precision, so it's not going to give me a lot of accuracy right now, and we'll level it up as much as we need to get our precision in a good, or accuracy in a good spot. Typically anything above 95% accuracy is fine. Yep, Shield Crush is a very, very good campaign build, essentially for all melee classes in Settlers of Kalgur. So this is a while ago now. I did a bunch of speedruns on pretty much every melee archetype with Shield Crush, including Templar, like a Templar Guardian melee Shield Crush, and it was A-OK. You can do Shield Crush on Scion, Ranger, Duelist, Marauder, and Templar for all your melee leveling needs. So that's sort of like the closest one-stop shop you have. And typically, you know, if you don't like Sunder, that would be the next best alternative. Yep, any of the Duelist Ascendancies works perfectly great with Shield Crush. I did a Shield Crush Slayer and commentary run recently, and that is up on my YouTube if you want to check that out. You can easily apply the lessons in it to Gladiator. You will functionally just change your Ascendancy nodes. Yep, the accuracy wheel could be useful. I don't know if I spec it though, just because typically we end up pretty okay for our accuracy values. Yep. So there is a... I have two runs. I have a commentary run with Shield Crush Slayer in about 2 hours and 24 minutes, and then I have a Twitch VOD, which I haven't uploaded to YouTube yet, with a 2 hour and 58 minute Shield Crush run to A10. That's like a League Start simulation. There's no commentary though. It's just like a full I run fast run. I also have a VOD of Dominating Below Guardian. That is 2 hours and 59 minutes for Act 10 without commentary. But this is the commentary version of that run, and obviously we're going a bit slower. Yep, so yeah, in the commentary run you'll find I have like a POB linked in the description with like the various leveling setups at various points, what shields you want, that sort of stuff, when you might want to gamble stuff. I have no idea when I'm league starting yet. I need to finish this commentary run, and then maybe I'll do one more, literally one more commentary run of something or other. Get it up to the YouTube, then think about what I want to league start. I do enjoy the Cyclone Shockwave Slayer a lot, so that could be a league start for me. But it'll help. Well, hopefully it'll help VODs. Not that it will for sure help, but it's good to poke around some stuff, especially for leveling, since leveling is a bit of a different beast than mapping stuff is. Just things that are good for leveling are not necessarily good for mapping in the end, because leveling has some different considerations than mapping builds do. In that sense, you know, one difference between mapping builds and like leveling builds is that leveling builds are way more focused on the density of nodes on the tree, so you lose less from XPing things that are allocating things that are far away. Obviously in mapping builds, you know, you have more nodes, so you can get more powerful nodes that are distant than nodes that are sort of closely packed together. So that's one way like campaign builds change the mapping builds, is that you'll see a campaign build sort of reduce some of its clustering or density of nodes into larger distances across the skill tree, because you can get better nodes. I wanted to use Glacial Shield Swipe, by the way, or like experiment with it with Shield Crush. I just never got around to it. Just one of the things that you're looking for with Shield Crush, at least early, is a single target supplement for it. Thank you for the follow, appreciate it. Alright, so after we pick up RT, we will go down and pick up Barbarism. Once we pick up Barbarism, we can respec that node right there to one of the nodes in Barbarism to help with our Ellie res. Yeah. Alright, so we're going to check our XP. As I mentioned, this event here gives you a ton of XP because of all the guaranteed blue packs that spawn along the way in the Gauntlet Escort here. So pretty much we got a level from this, which is great. And then 46 is what we wanted to end this act on. Ideally, we already have it. So anything we get in Brian King's Reef is great afterwards. With Brian King's, after you kill him, you want to make sure you put on his major Pantheon for the Pantheon that avoids you from getting stunlocked. Oh shit, we want to fucking get out of there. That is bad. Okay, I cannot wait until next patch, by the way, when the shrines are going to take priority over clicking mobs. That is going to be such a big quality of life increase. This is a zone, by the way, I talked about way earlier, that there are certain zones you kind of want to get your big guy out right away. This is one of them. The rock golems in this zone absolutely truck. And then on top of that, the mobs that send all those ice Nova bolts out, whatever the hell they are, the ice bolts, the chill from those really can put you in a bad spot in terms of like dodging and moving around.
So strong. So dedicated.
Okay, we will take RT. Now that we have RT, we can drop our precision since it's not doing anything. Once we drop precision, we can put our momentum back on our faster attack setup. I don't care about that thing at all. I don't care about the heist contract. One thing I'm looking at right now is my health is a little low. I want to try addressing that when I can. I have this gigantic belt that's sitting here that with 100 life on, that'll help a lot. I don't have the res to justify the swap right now. My weapon is still good enough for a while longer, so what I'm going to do when I get to the next act is I'm going to gamble from Faustus a new chest if I can to try and get the belt on. Because, like, this is a pretty good chest already, but I just need to swap if all possible because this is way too valuable to keep in my inventory. Also, getting another chest would be helpful because I'd like a little more armor. Armor is one of our primary defensive sources in this run. And we get scaling built in from the stupid ascendancy, the guardian ascendancy. Make sure we put on Brian King right away. Always do that after you kill the bosses you want. I talked about using the Tukahama minor passive or minor Pantheon. If you didn't want to use that one, the other good one is Raslatha, which is the one that gives you flash charges if you haven't used any recently. Okay. The 4-link, I'd like a rare if at all possible. Great, this one is excellent. Even has an open suffix for us to craft on. We are going to need cold when we craft on this. And we're going to need, how much? At least 22. So we can do an alch there. We'll sell this other stuff. And then we will get our chest recolored, hopefully, to the right colors. Perfect. We're good to go. I don't care about that helmet, really, so
These
we'll move on.
innocents continue to suffer. Rayclast must be set right.
Okay, so once we equip both that chest and our new belt, we are going to be in a lot better place. We actually might have an issue with cold res. If that's the case, we will just try and reroll our gloves into something different. However, I do know for a fact that I can swap my chest without much issue. So if I can't get the belt on without res issues, I'll just swap the chest once I'm level 47. I want to be level 47 by the time I am entering Chamber of Sins level 1. And then I want to be 48 by the time I do the Groose fight for Ralakesh, I believe the dude's name is. I can never remember that one. Then by the time I want to exit this act, I want to be about 50 and a half. We will do lab before we go do our Kali. So we'll get all the skill points in this act to give us some extra power boost. Yeah, pretty much. For Shield Crush, the main thing is to try and keep the shield updated and to use bases that have good inherent rules of defenses. Because not all bases are created equal. Some bases might have a higher eye level requirement, but for whatever reason, have lower armor or evasion values than a lower tier base does.
Shine boldly, so that all may find you when the night.
By the way, you want to make sure you get the waypoint in this zone in particular, because in two of the layouts for the crypt, the sarcophagus will be before the trial, and if you don't get the waypoint and you go to the trial and you log out after the trial, which by the way would have never happened to me, has never happened to me, I deny all responsibility of that happening in the past, you know, you might have to run back through a couple zones. So yeah, get the waypoint. Okay, we can put on our new chest. We will go ahead and do that. We'll make sure our resistances are fine after we do so. Okay, we've had a open blue socket for a little bit that we could have used with like another damage support. Oop, we sold our chest, so didn't mean to do that. We can respec this node now for this first node on barbarism, and our health is looking to be in a much better spot. Okay, gotta make sure I turn on my stuff again. This is a good spot, by the way, once we get Barbarism and we have RT to start going towards the Mana Reservation nodes, and once we get those, we can put Flesh and Stone on for a defensive aura, or, you know, a conditional damage aura when we turn it to Blood Stance on single target, but for clearing, we will have it in Sand Stance pretty much the entire time. You can also potentially fit Arctic Armor on. It's just things get a little tight mana-wise once you start doing stuff like that. And if you were to go down that route, I'd probably do something like Life Tap on your Dominating Blow. But that also affects the Dominating Blow. So I try to avoid putting on Arctic Armor, if at all possible, until I get more reservation efficiency than what I will have initially. So basically, in terms of the rhythm of what I'm doing in zones now is I'm going to stop for pretty much any blue pack I kill or come across to kill them. And then for white packs, what I'll do outside of like the initial pack in the zone is I'll just one tap the white pack and then like literally attack it once, then leap slam away, and just repeat that process for the rest of the campaign. I'll let my minions take care of whatever else sort of is alive. Now, one thing to mention is sometimes your minions can be a bit slow at killing stuff, so you just want to pay attention to your XP values so you don't, like, you know, start skipping too much. I have no idea on that question. For the Flicker Strike and what to farm with it. There is a very thriving community of Flicker Strike enthusiasts, though, that might have some better suggestions than I do on that. Especially if you're playing, like, softcore, and, like, trade in particular. Okay. On our, in terms of our XP, I mentioned we wanted to be 48 by the Gruus fight, or the Ralakesh fight. On pace to do so, which is good. So blue packs, again, I'll stop the kill. And then white packs, I will just tap once with my skill, and then move on. I play SCSSF, mainly because I'm pretty casual when it comes to, like, mapping stuff. Typically I'll be listening to, like, audiobooks or something while I'm mapping, or hanging out in Twitch chat, like, just talking with people while I'm watching the stream.
There is a fine line between consideration and hesitation.
So both of those activities are not conducive to living in hardcore. Because I typically tend to pay more attention to the audiobook than I do what's going on screen, so. Nonetheless, I do try and like to limit the amount of deaths that I have in softcore, so typically if I start ending up in, like, the greater than, like, 15 range in softcore, I'll just reset the character. So in a sense, I kind of do play, like, pseudo hardcore, but not really, like, softcore with a bit of a death penalty built in, we'll put it that way. Alright, so the next things we are looking to do here is, I mentioned before, we had a good weapon. It's been good for a while still. We'll probably try and change it in Act 8. We have RT now, which means we can swap to an axe base. The reason why you might want to swap to an axe base over swords is they do more damage natively, and we don't need to benefit from the accuracy from swords anymore, so that's a good option. You could also do staves, or war staffs specifically, because they'll give you some block, which is nice for defense. And generally speaking, they have a good attack speed base, and we have the attributes to match them. Then finally, one of the reasons we transition away from swords is at a certain point we won't have enough dex for two-handed swords anymore. Jinsu, thank you for the follow. Get him, boys. So a two-handed sword and a two-handed axe just dropped for us there, so, you know, we might as well identify them, see if any are any good. This axe is actually kind of decent. It looks like, and this, unfortunately, is bricked by the fact that we can't craft a prefix on it. I am super happy that they put the second ascendancy for Scion in there. I am really excited for that. Now, the one thing they need to do to make Scion less crappy for Scion, or starting Scion, is they really need to address the fact that you don't get an ascendancy for Scion from the first lab. That is like the most cock and ball torture ever, and it makes running Scion so frustrating. The other thing I wish they would do for Scion, although this is not really their style, is provide like a conditional benefit to the Scion starting nodes for Scion specifically. So let's say, like, you know, you have, like, you give, like, I don't know, 1.5 times effectiveness to the Scion for Scion starting nodes, while all other classes just get what's on the tree currently. And the whole reason for that is the Scion starting nodes are kind of crappy. And they justify it by the fact that eventually later in the game they're powerful, right? There's a lot of jewel sockets and stuff like there. And then you have, God, what is that one jewel called that's really good there? Fuck. Damn it, I don't remember what it's called. It's the one that, like, allocates the small notables that you don't allocate in the radius. A natural instinct, thank you very much. Yep, that's the one.
I have seen this place.
Yeah, but that's a bit of the Doc rant on the whole Scion thing. By the way, you know, with the commentary stuff, essentially, I should mention philosophically, what we do in speedruns in general is that really we are using the first couple acts to prepare. So we're using like acts 1 through 3 to prepare for act 4 and 5, right? Obviously, but then we're using act 4 and 5 to prepare for the second half of the campaign. By the time we get to the second half of the campaign, and once you do your Lily cycle of gems, essentially you're done making gem changes for the most part. You might put on another gem or two here or there, but generally by the time you reach the second half of the campaign, the gear that you have is going to be the gear that you use to finish the campaign outside of like weapon upgrades. So, basically, the second half of the campaign, once you get here, is really just about your zone traversal and maintaining your XP and clearing well, which is why, you know, there's not really been much commentary about, like, how we're preparing for gear changes and things like that, and adaptability, because at this point, everything except our weapon is set in stone. Right? So, the other relevant thing from there, you know, we talked about it with like how I'm doing my traversal in terms of like killing mobs and stuff like that. Some pathing stuff will come up, we'll talk about, right? And then, but like XP thresholds, and that's kind of about it. So I should do this guy first, because it's actually gonna save me some backtracking. Typically, I will always drop a portal outside of the entrance to the Dread Thicket, unless I don't have one, and I will go do, like, the Causeway area, get the skill point from there, and then go to the Vaal Temple, and then waypoint back, go through the portal, and do the Dread Thicket. My character's a little weak. I'll collect the skill points before doing the Dread Thicket boss, because she can be a bit dangerous. We'll go ahead and go to Izaro now. Okay, we can pick up these nodes, and we can pick up these nodes. I was actually supposed to pick up Heart and Soul way earlier, but I forgot about it. So I should have picked up Heart and Soul before going down and doing the RT pathing. It's okay that we messed it up a little bit there. That would explain why my health felt so low for a little bit. I was missing a couple nodes I was expecting to have. Happens. So now that we got pretty much most of our life nodes, the only other life nodes we're going to get are these guys in a little bit. We're going to path down towards Grave Pact next. We're going to do the following next. We're going to get our reservation efficiency nodes, and then we're going to get Grave Pact. So that would be our next big major purchase. I made a little bit of an oopsie here. If you ever get fonts in lab, you should definitely kill them, especially if your character is doing like a speed run, because fonts up the danger of the curse fonts up the danger of lab like hilariously much compared to a lot of the other things. The only thing that's really comparable to like upping Azaro's difficulty versus fonts is the charge disruptor things, or like the gain charges. That's also incredibly spooky. Other mechanics you want to potentially address in lab or essences. Like usually I like to kill at least one essence before it merges with Azaro, because if you leave the essences up, they tend to do a lot of elemental damage, and if you pair them with something like the curse fonts we have right now, you can easily die to them. Gargoyles are also another good one to manage. Usually I'll always kill at least one gargoyle. If I'm on a squishier class, I will kill 2 or 3 of them. I don't care about lieutenants at all. I don't really care about the statutes that generate like the AoE effects on the ground. And then portals, generally speaking, are a benefit, not a detriment to fighting Azaro. The only time they're a detriment is if you have a low DPS build and they can start overwhelming you. But mostly, in speedruns, the build should have enough DPS to handle the portals fine, so that's why they end up being a benefit. On down below, obviously they're going to be a benefit because they'll generate minions for us to get up on Azaro. We have lieutenants here, I don't really care about that. I'm sure one of my minions will end up killing that guy, or get close to it anyways.
Withstand the siege.
Yep. So we just killed that guy. If you ever get him in like Merc Lab, he is extremely dangerous. You just want to pay attention to like the little signal that he does about where his thing is going to aim. That's typically how I address that guy. But you are right, that guy is can be extremely dangerous. If you feel like your character is a little weak, by the way, at this point, or you don't feel confident in sort of, you know, doing Azaro at this point, you can totally wait till Act 8. And when you would do it in Act 8 is essentially, you would get the 2 skill points from the right side, from the Jumbling Legion and doing the Tolman quest with Clarissa. And then pretty much after you clear the right side, you would come back and do Lab. By that point, you should be like level 52, level 53. Which will give you an extra 2 passive points from levels, and then you'll get another 2 passive points from the skillbook quests. And then you'll have your minions will have a chance to level, or if you're not playing this build, you're playing something else, your skills will have a chance to level if you're a caster, for example.
Can afford to be promising. An emperor, you must navigate your empire.
Okay, you don't want to stand in stuff, obviously. As I stand in stuff and almost leap back into a slam.
Triumphant at last.
Okay, we have a noble axe and a wrath sword that dropped again. We'll check the noble axe to see if it's any good. Okay, a bunch of armors, which is good. We will quality up our down below. We actually have a GCP that dropped, so we'll use that here too. I probably wouldn't use this in like an actual league start. I'd save that for a different time. But I have not answered that particular question yet, so you don't have to worry about that. I will answer in a second. Shield Crush, Herald of Ice over Ash. No, you don't want to use Herald of Ash is pretty much the best Herald you can use on any sort of melee build, unless you're using Brutality. It is a huge DPS loss. You don't really need flat scaling or flat sources of damage on Shield Crush because your damage already comes effectively from a bunch of flat sources. You are really looking to get percent modifiers or things that effectively act like percent modifiers on Shield Crush. Obviously, flat damage is helpful, but Herald of Ash is just going to be way better than Herald of Ice on Shield Crush. Hatred. Hatred would also be a good one.
Approach, challenger.
Alright, so I want to end this act around 50.5 to 51. I'll just check my XP here. I am going to be 51 by the time I end this act. The Temple of Decay zones are actually pretty decent XP because there are a lot of blue packs, a lot of density. The one downside is they are mega dangerous. The flicker spiders have ended many of a deathless runs of mine in the past, so just be aware of that. There's also a lot of chaos damage in here. This is like the first zone in the campaign outside of like the temple area in Act 2 where there's a lot of chaos damage, so that can also pop you if you're not paying attention. So the combination of the chaos damage and the flicker spiders make this zone very spooky. If you were playing on shield charge, for whatever reason, instead of doing a two-handed setup, you decided to do a one-handed setup, the Temple of Decay zones will always have a diagonal that goes across the map where the bridge is unbroken, which you can shield charge across uninterrupted. The other diagonal will have a broken bridge that you'll need some sort of gap traversal skill to get across, and Frostblink is not enough to do it. You need something like Flame Dash or Leap Slam. Oh, ghosted. Nice. That'll be fun. Surely nothing goes wrong. Oh, I just do too much damage. Doesn't matter. So now that I have, by the way, the mastery, or the elemental relics, I will get the mastery for A10 for my guys, since they're actually doing, like, an appreciable amount of elemental damage now. Okay, so starting with Act 8 onwards, I'm pretty much going to try and remember to summon my guy at the start of the zone every single time. The Sentinel of Radiance, because these are the zones where you can start just getting one-shotted by stuff. We want to end this act at about level 56, or close to it if at all possible. Now, a few patches ago, they introduced the Underbelly zone, which you can use to skip a couple zones, and it is technically faster routing than other places. I use the word technically for the following reason. That route gives you less XP than other routes because it is shorter, it has less monster density, and the mobs that are in the Underbelly are heist mobs, which are tankier. So not only will you encounter less mobs because the path's shorter and there's less density, they're also harder to kill. So what can end up happening in Act 8, especially in the speedrun context, or trying to go as fast as possible, is this is really the first act where you can really start running into major XP penalties if you path wrong. And what I mean by that is the following. Essentially, the zones in Act 8 start leveling up quite a lot. And as a result of that, for example, if you try going across the harbor bridge instead of doing the pathing that we're going to be doing here, it can result in you starting to get in the hurt locker in terms of XP. The XP penalty is essentially the following. You need to be at least within 3 levels, plus 1 additional level for every 16 levels. Here, we're over level 48. That means we need to be within 6 levels of the zone. I gotta let my dog into my room real quick. 1 second. Sorry. Okay. Alright, so sorry about that. Back into the rant about the XP. With the XP, right, we want to consider thinking about how we can maintain our lead. What happens is if you go all the way to the Harbor Bridge area, that Harbor Bridge area has a zone level of 60, and if you're level 51, for example, and you're going through Harbor Bridge, you are going to be in for a bad time because you'll be like 3 levels under the zone, right? I have an Airedale Terrier, which is this guy here. So the pathing that we're going to do is to ensure that we have as good of XP as possible. We are going to actually do the following. We're going to go to the left first, and we're just going to go through the Grand Promenade. It's a pretty good XP zone. There's a lot of blue packs, and it's not that long or hard to navigate if you are using your movement skills well. what I mean by that is we're going to tap packs and move on. So, see, to navigate it, essentially you just follow the water. There is some slightly more advanced navigation strategies than that, but following the water will get you there the vast majority of the time. And then obviously turn off Delirium. Not really much of a benefit for it. Oh, got a bunch of essences. I didn't realize we were in Essence Delirium. The reason why I turn off Delirium is if I want to just one-tap packs and move along. Delirium can prevent that from happening, especially the further in the Delirium cloud you get. But yeah, we go this way, and then we will go get the waypoint in the bathhouse, and we'll get the waypoint in Lunaris Concourse, and then we'll go back to the right side. What that will allow us to do is go through a level 56 zone, like a level 57 zone, for the XP, and then when we go back to the right side, we'll go through 56, 57 again. If you were to go all the way through like the Harbor Bridge concourse areas, what ends up happening is you go to a level 58 zone, you go to a level 59 zone, you go to a level 60 zone. You can sort of see if how you path a little bit weirdly in this act, you can start getting into the Hurt Locker with XP if your XP is low. So that's why the doc rant on the underbelly pathing and how you should probably path this act. And the best way to maintain your XP, because if you start getting behind on XP, you have to spend more time XPing. So we want to try and balance total traversal time versus time killing and maintaining XP. And so this path does it pretty well. Now if your XP is good, right, and you're vibing, the underbelly path is fast. So you can commit to that, but in most cases, I think for most people, you know, the underbelly path is nice because it is shorter, but it is a bit of a trap unless you are meeting certain conditions. In this particular zone, you always want to hug the left wall from the entrance until you find the quest item area. The quest item area will be signaled by an arch, and if you hug the left wall, you will always find that arch at some point. Alright, we'll continue picking up our reservation nodes, and once we get a little more reservation efficiency, we can put on our Flesh and Stone that we've had sitting around forever. What socket are we going to use to get it on? We actually don't have a socket for it. Interesting. So we're going to recolor something real quick to get a socket for that. We'll probably resocket our gloves, or recolor our gloves to make that happen. Thank you for the follow, Nano. Thank you for the follow, Astro. Alright. We will continue on. This next zone we're going to is the Grain Gate. There's a little navigation tip for there. If you're confused about how to go through, you're always going to navigate through at least 3 grain storehouses to get through the zone. And to help you with that process, there is a dead body of like a black card outside each of those areas. So when we go through, I'll sort of point out what I mean by that. Okay, here's a dead body. We can't really see it that well, but you want to use that signal to know that that is the sort of warehouse you want to go through. You can also see it on the other side. As I mentioned, there'll be 3 total dead body or grain houses that we're forced to go through. You saw another one there. And then the Gemling Legionnaires will be over this way. Dead body. Go through. And we move. Hey Vinny, how's it going? So this sword here will probably be good enough to upgrade our current sword, actually, which might have the dual purpose of solving a couple issues for us. We're going to craft flat fizz on that, but we don't have enough in terms of alterations to be able to do so. So that's actually going to be how I think I'm going to upgrade my sword instead of gambling. If we didn't have a sword upgrade or this axe upgrade sort of waiting in the wings, what we would do is would gamble a weapon when we return to town here, because we haven't upgraded our weapon in a long time. And while our particular, like the damage that we deliver ourselves becomes less relevant because our minions have scaled, it's still good to have it because we need some way to pop packs early to start our minion generation, since Down Blow and Herald of Purity both rely on minions dying. I don't know why I have a Kinetic Blast Gem in my inventory. I have RT, so I don't need Precision anymore. I do not need that support. I'm just cleaning some stuff up. No, I am not. The Docran thing is just a Twitch meme. I am definitely a speedrunner. that's a good point too, Vinny. You for sure would want to ask that question before that particular medical exam.
You're not the most. I'll sing it.
Good. Be well.
Good to see you.
I would need lightning cold, right? Yeah,
Don't do
fine.
anything I would.
Okay, I'm just trying to sell some stuff to be able to get potentially another alteration. Okay, I don't care about this chisel. I don't care about scraps. And then I don't have enough still. It's fine. Let's ID all.
Hello.
Wait, I don't need to be doing what I'm doing right now. It is a bit of a time waste to do this stuff. But, oh, that's a good ring. We can put that on. And then I think with that ring, we might be able to finally put on our Giga Belt. 1 second. Okay. Can we change a craft somewhere? We don't need that much fire res, so we're going to get a scour. And we're going to change this craft to cold, and we should be good. Okay, sweet. And then we can sell that ring, and then we still don't have enough
Hero,
to get other stuff. Okay, blah, blah, blah.
farewell.
Alright, on to the other side, and eventually we will hopefully have enough to get another alteration to craft that weapon. And then we needed potentially 3 red sockets on that thing. Got it, which is good. Actually, we wanted to recolor our gloves. That's what we wanted to do. Perfect. Do I need to be doing this while moving in the zone? No, I do not. Do I do it anyways? Yes, I do. Okay.
wisdom to be tempered by the flames of the past.
I mean, well, you go back to the bathhouse, right? If you're going to go do this skill point anyways, so you might as well just get the trial and then go do this. You can skip the high garden area for a long time, especially if you're playing hardcore, because this zone is particularly spooky, and Yugal himself does a lot of damage. Technically, it's not Yugal that does a lot of damage, it's the stupid like effects that the Yugal fight has. He can do a decent amount of damage if he slams on you, but for example, like in minion fights, it's kind of hard to see what the hell he's doing, so take that for what you will. This zone's another good zone to make sure you have the big guy up. I was kind of slacking on that again, as is per usual. Okay, cool.
Stay out of the shadows. They bite.
Hello.
This is Nathan.
Okay, that'll be our weapon for the rest of campaign. We needed a green socket so we can take off momentum, put blood rage or poacher's mark, whatever it was back there. We've got a bunch of points to assign. So if we don't have this wheel, we'll fill that out, and then we'll start pathing down towards Grave Pact, fill this stuff out. And then finally, we can get our Flesh and Stone that we've had waiting forever. This is also another zone where there should be high priority on trying to get your big dude down, because the mobs here start doing a lot of damage. I am stuck. Alright, there we go. Unstuck. Yep, I answered that question earlier. Functionally, for campaign, it just helps with the damage profile of starting off zones. Eventually, Claw Shield or one-handed weapon shield will be better than this. Whether you use something like the mace, the black mace, or whatever the hell that thing's called, or like you play crit with the teaching scepter. Forget the actual name on that thing. You could use that. Obviously, there are a couple good claws. There's like the Scourge, and then there's the like Wall of the Wilds one. Kind of works too. Mada's teachings, thank you. So yeah, there are a couple really good one-handed weapon options, and obviously there are a lot of great shield options that you can end up using. But for campaign purposes, it just helps to have big stick to bonk stuff. Get your minions started early. Big stick, bonk, and then I can just run through. The issue with the claws and stuff, I mentioned this earlier too, right, is sometimes you can have attribute issues keeping your claws up to date, because claws have very high dex and hit requirements. Swords do have high requirements, but not quite as high as that. The one place where you really feel the difference between swords and claws, though, is obviously on like a single target scenario, where claws are going to be way better at getting your minions up faster because you just attack faster. But conversely, essentially, what we're doing is we're trading one advantage for another advantage, where we are able to get our minions up and running way sooner in a zone than you can with a claw, which means we can traverse the zone faster, and because we are spending the majority of our time on zone traversal and XPing rather than like single target fights, right? Like that single target fight was super fast. It just makes sense to sort of try and optimize that. But in maps later, right, you know, you can swap. The other thing is you'll have minions and more sockets that will be powerful enough to help you start. Early in campaign, part of the issue is that your minions quite aren't strong enough to help you start off zones. Well, so that's why we sort of take the approach that we take. Usually I start off by fighting this guy first. If you start off by fighting the other one first, you can end up in a weird position. Usually if you fight that one first, you'll end up in the middle here. If you fight the one on the left first, because it is slightly less well positioned, or like more, yeah, it just gets weird. So basically the one you fight first is the one you kill first. And if you kill the one on the right first, your fight will end up in the middle of the platform easier than it will be if you try and fight the left one first. The right one, for reference, is Solaris. Hey, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad you've been tuning in. So later in the acts, I like to start checking to make sure what my portal scroll count looks like. Usually, I kind of want like 10 to 15 portal scrolls for like Act 8, Act 9, Act 10. Obviously, you know, they drop a lot, so you can start picking up more, and that's helpful for, you know, when you transition to mapping too, since you don't have to like, log all the time. I'll do an NA only trick there. It's actually faster than walking. Sorry, EU. Your load screens are just too long. Summon the big guy first here, since this zone is particularly dangerous. Alright, so what we're looking to do in this act is pretty much just try and maintain our XP as best as possible. We started the act at 56, which is what we wanted. We want to end this act around level 59. This act is pretty short as long as you can keep just moving through the zones pretty well. You'll notice here what we're just going to focus on is doing just that. We'll tap the pack and we'll move on. And we'll just try and keep our pacing up by consistently having our leap slam going as soon as we land, if we don't attack something, then using frost blink as necessary. Okay. The quest item is not in either of the two close spots, so usually it can be right over here, so we follow that top wall when we enter the zone. Or it can be right above the waypoint. It is not there. If it's not there, we will check down to the south corner. If it's not in the south corner, we will check all the way to the west. It will be in the west corner here, which will be nice. What we'll do is we'll do the Stormblade portion of it, and we'll go do the Vastiri Desert Oasis area for Shikari immediately. if you have the Stormblade, by the way, and you go to the portal over here, you can skip a couple things of dialogue in town, because once you discover this, you can talk to Sin right away, and Sin will send you to the knuckleheads over here, Patreus and Vanja, and you will be able to immediately get the Bottled Storm. You can only get the Bottled Storm, though, immediately like this if you've discovered the Oasis first, which is why after getting the Stormblade, you go to the Oasis and drop a portal. Otherwise, if you go back to town, they'll send you like an RP quest to go find the entrance to the Oasis before they'll give you this Bottled Storm. My least favorite boss fight in the game. Oh, I hate how long this takes. Wouldn't be so bad if like this little gauntlet event was a little faster and like the immunity phases lasted like less. Actually, I don't really like any of the Act 9 fights. I think they're all kind of annoying. Except for the Dodri fight. That one's fine. The Refinery fight is annoying because that guy is just tanky as hell for no reason and has high inherent block. So on like attack builds, if you've ever noticed on attack builds, he takes way longer to kill on casters. That's because he's blocking all your shit. Yeah, Basilisk is also a pretty chill fight. I forgot about that one. You can turn this skill point in now, or you can wait. Typically, it depends on what I'm trying to do. If I need the power, I will go turn it in right away. But in this case, I will just go back to town via a portal, which puts me right near the waypoint, which is a little faster than logging in this circumstance. So in Act 9, there are certain times it'll be faster to portal than log. But if you want to save portals, you can always just log. It doesn't really matter that much. The only time I would recommend having a portal is for that Oasis thing. Otherwise, you know, logging is fine elsewhere. But yeah, so I will wait to turn in that skill point until I get the skill point also from Garukan. So I'll turn in both at a time, which is just a little small efficiency that saves me a few seconds. Nothing crazy. By the way, if you have inventory issues, you can go ahead and talk to Sin once you get any of these random quest items, even in town, and he will suck up the item or vacuum up the item and store it for later. So when you turn in both of them, he'll be able to open that Belly of the Beast sort of right away. I always forget to do that, but, you know, since Sin is right there, if you log out, it's not bad to do. The trial in this zone will always be before the waypoint, so if you've gotten to the waypoint, you haven't found the trial yet, you have missed the trial. Usually it'll just be a little offshoot off the main path.
An emperor must bear two blades.
By the way, we didn't talk about this, and ironically enough, it just happened. If you ever come directly across a sulfite node in your path, click on it because it will often drop the Society's Remorse div card. I would not go out of your way to find sulfite zone like nodes in campaign to find it, but that Society's Remorse will turn in for one card for 10 alterations, and it is fairly frequent from the sulfite nodes. So it's a nice way to help manage your currency and campaign for pretty much minimal time difference if you're coming across a sulfite node anyways. It's a hard question to answer because usually I don't do campaign in such a way to try and finish it as fast as possible. I try and finish it as fast as possible with conditions, like getting all skill points, all labs, and being certain levels. So in the quarry, the zone that we just... Quarry, there we go. In the quarry, in that particular zone, you always want to head to the right middle first, because there will always be one of the refinery or Garokhan's shrine there. If Garokhan's shrine is there instead of the refinery, then the refinery will be in the top middle portion of the map along the top wall. If the refinery is there instead, then Garokhan's shrine will be on the left middle wall of the map. Garokhan's shrine can never be on the top portion of the map, and the refinery can never be on the left side of the map. So there will always be something at the right side that is relevant to finishing the act. So you check there first. So we will talk to Katava here. Or not Katava, the dude, Sin. And you'll see that we talked to him once here, and he'll open this real quick. My fastest all skill points with all labs is like a 248 or something like that. And being level 60 at the finish. I think I'd be faster now if I were to try and go all out on a meta build. The issue is that I don't often play the meta leveling builds anymore. They're just not all that interesting to me. So I imagine if I were to give it a few good tries, my time would be like in the low 240 somewhere on a meta build. Getting all skill points, labs, trying to be deathless, and then be level 60 at the end of it. If I sold out on being deathless or level 60, I could probably get that in the 230s. Yeah, I love Lawrence. Lawrence is one of my favorite bands. Yep, you can get campaigns pretty faster. Someone like Exile Tai will go even faster than me, or Alex. Yeah, and they'll probably be like 10 minutes faster, 10-15 minutes faster than I will be. No, at least, at least, let's just say that. I don't use uniques at all in runs, so I'm not going to pick up anything. Or if I do, I'll sell it. I forget what that one does particularly, but I remember that having some sort of minion scaling with it. I don't think for anything I'm using though. But As you can see, our damage with our minion bros is extremely good at the moment, and sort of this is where minions just ramp up a lot towards the second half of the campaign, right? Things become pretty chill. Our minions have a lot of scaling, we have a lot of support on the passive tree for them. So things start going very smooth. Obviously, one thing you want to try and pay attention to, which, you know, not doing the best job about it myself right now, is, you know, not getting lazy with boss mechanics. So I've just kind of been standing in a few, like I just stood in that one, even though I was talking about it there. By the way, you want to portal out after you kill that boss, because if you portal, you enter the Act 9 waypoint, and you don't need to wait for that animation to complete for Act 10 to be unlocked. If you wait for that animation to complete and you sail via Lily, you also have to walk through the entirety of the Act 10 town. The waypoint from Act 9 to Act 10 takes you right to the entrance to where you need to go to start Act 10. So, no loot. Yeah, you miss out the loot. What's up, Angormus? How you doing? How have your runs been going? How's playing PoE 1? I did skip that loot. Alright, so let's talk about pathing in Act 9. You have three options. There's the no portal option, and then there's two options with the portals. We're going to do one of the portal options. It's important to understand why we might care about our pathing here. Basically, Act 9, or Act 10, excuse me, because it's segmented into left and right half, with no good waypoint, forces you to backtrack at least a little bit. So the way I like doing it is as follows. We're going to talk when I yap a little more. So the pathing without a portal is as follows. You go to the rune square and you go straight to the Valenta skill point area. You pick up the waypoint there, and then you do the Valenta skill quest. And you go back to the waypoint there and backtrack across the Ravaged Square to get to the right half of doing stuff, and blah blah blah, you do stuff. Basically, the way we want to orient this act is we want to do our Merc Lab as late as possible, so we want to do that last before we go do Katava. We want to do Merc Lab before Katava because we don't want to deal with the res penalty during Merc Lab. Merc Lab can be very dangerous, by the way. The other portal pathing option that we have is placing a portal in Ravaged Square, going to the Ossuary waypoint, getting that, going back to town, going through the waypoint, back to town, going through the portal, and then going to do Valenta. Now, the way I like to do the pathing is what we're doing here, which is we drop the portal, we get the Ossuary waypoint, and then we run all the way over to the Torch Courts and we do the Innocence / Avarius reconstructed fight to get the Staff of Innocence. This has a couple advantages. Now, you may be asking, well, dude, like, how the hell do you get all the way from Avarius to, you know, town again if you can't portal or you can't log? Well, once you kill Avarius, in that little boss room, a door will open in the southeast corner, which will take you back to the start of the Desecrated Chambers in the waypoint over this way. So the one benefit is we can use that door that opens to go to the waypoint and take our portal back. Now, what are the advantages of doing this? Basically, we can get some quest dialogue, RP out of the way early, which will speed our towns up, and we end up with less loading screens / town trips than other methods. So overall, it's a nice little bit of flow to this act that you can do. Now here's the one danger of doing this method, and I am guilty of this in the past, is sometimes you can accidentally press your portal button, or you can log out and get rid of your portal, and you end up having to backtrack anyways. So my knowledge, my answer to that, Vaz, is just I don't think it will, based on their wording versus the links, because links are not explicit modifiers. So it shouldn't affect the link chance, I hope. Because that's really the best use of Gamba and campaign outside of weapons, is just getting your 4 links. Alright, so after we kill this dude, we'll see that portal open. By the way, you do not want to get hit by any of his abilities because his abilities will kill characters with Fortify and 2500 HP. I've had that happen to me before, and it has ruined a Deathless run, so be aware. Alright, now we go back through that entrance. We're going to talk to Bannon once to turn him into Innocence, and then we'll just close like the 8 dialogue boxes Lanny wants to open. So when we return from the Valenta quest, we can talk to her once, and she'll just give us the skill book right away instead of trying to talk our ears off. And we can do both of those things. Part of the reason why it's efficient with that portal is that portal allows us to take, or the waypoint back allows us to talk to both of them on the way to the portal. I mentioned I wanted to end this act around level 61 to 62, just based on the XP we're at right now. We've got a few more big zones to go. We will probably end sort of towards the later half of 61. If we want to just XP more, we totally can. Yeah, you want to try and gamble at level 25. Basically, I think, essentially that's when 4 links can start dropping. Technically, the gamble can generate items 5 eye levels higher or lower than your character. But for some reason, if you try and gamble below level 25, 4 links seem less common. That could just be observer bias, but that's what I've noticed. I haven't done like a large-scale sample with it, though. I know maybe one day I'll get a character that has like a couple million gold on it and then just go test with like a level 23 character or something versus a level 25 character. I would probably gamble like 100 times, not that many times. It's already going to be annoying to like do it. 100 you should get enough to have a decent idea. Not a precise idea, but decent. Okay, I've got a bunch of skill points I've been holding on to. Functionally, what we're going to do with these last skill points is just put them in a bunch of health to finish off the run. You could also start pathing towards more minion nodes, like for example, wouldn't be a bad idea to fill out the rest of the spiritual aid wheel that we've left open with 2 of the points, and then we can use a few of the points to put health in. Or you can start pathing towards the crit minion nodes, or there's like the specter nodes over this way that you could path towards. It's a bunch of options. We'll just put those 2 here since we're right there, and it's good point efficiency, and we'll assign some more points in health. Alright, time for Merc Lab. Merc Lab has ended many of Deathless speedruns before, so this is actually probably one of the most dangerous parts of the entire run for me if I want to go Deathless, especially if you're on a caster. It's also dangerous for this build in particular because we don't have any minion generation really off of Izaro unless he decides to help us out with some skeletons early.
Where there's a golden key, there must be a golden door.
By the way, if you are, say you're in this zone and you're like still level 58, just know that it's kind of better to almost skip mobs. I mean, just kill stuff that you have to kill, right, for flash charges and whatnot, or that's otherwise going to kill you. But if you're 58 doing Merc Lab, which is kind of under-leveled, you're not going to be getting much XP because you're like 4 levels under the penalty or something. 3 levels under the penalty. So that will, you know, deplete your XP a lot. Here I'm 1 level under the penalty, or I was 1 level under the penalty. Now I am within like safe XP range again. Here I'm definitely gonna make sure, by the way, oh fuck, I forgot to take some notes. Okay, that's what I was taking. By the way, charge disruptors, I am absolutely not gonna let Azaro have charges by the time he phases. That's a good way to die to Azaro for 1 shot. Oh, never mind, I lied. We're doing it for science. We're going to show how dangerous Azaro is with charges. You know, I did think about making it so you, like, you were aware that you shouldn't, but, you know, we're going to do an actual demonstration of what Azaro with charges looks like. So, yeah, obviously you want to be a little faster. I guess my minions, were a little, overzealous in beating down Azaro, so, yeah. We're gonna be in for a bit of cinema if Azaro decides to hit us. There's a good chance we might die. By the way, I can spec a couple of the nodes. I just spec'd a little differently. In particular, I wanted to get the quick recovery nodes that are right near Enduring Bond, and I forgot about it till now, so I'm gonna just unspec a couple things and assign those. It'll give us another health notable and also some life regen and like mana regen.
When the time comes to strike, an emperor strikes without hesitation. To entertain that
Alright, minions, you've got to save my dumb ass. Oh, and gargoyles. Charges and gargoyles. This is fantastic.
honor
Okay.
your name. Such resilience.
So fortunately, he didn't attack me, which is good.
Pity the emperor who sits alone on his throne.
We'll unspec that, and we'll get quick recovery, and then whatever else we get, we'll put it into a life node or a minion mastery of your choosing, since we have a minion cluster available on Grave Pack. You could also start investing towards an extra strike off of the strike, like attack cluster that's right there. Typically, though, I find it's more point efficient to get extra strike somewhere, like, you know, on gloves, if you're not playing triad grips, which, you know, I think a lot of builds will end up doing LA conversion with this anyways, or some form of LA conversion. You could play this Fizz and Pale.
An aspirant can afford to be promising. An emperor must keep empire.
Okay, at least it's not the... This arena's not bad. The stupid poison dart arena is like the worst. The poison dart with like all the spikes. I hate that one so much. This one, not great, but it's more playable for sure.
Strike with fidelity. Triumphant at last.
Nice. We will quality up something or other here. Let's get our Dom Blow boys qualityed up. And then for this Ascendancy, you can kind of take whatever. I default to the block one just because it's nice to have. I don't really have strong preferences towards one or the other. Obviously, if you're going for the reservation one later, you would want to take the first node for that instead. I am ready, Einhar.
I knew that you would find the path of of righteousness once more, my Lord of Light. I shall be honored to fight by your side.
And then from this point forward, we can just chill leap slam our way to Kitava and go punch Kitava in the face and end this thing in a pretty good time. Sub 330 and hopefully 0 deaths if things go to plan on Kitava. Kitava can be a bit of a cinema fight sometime, especially after, I don't know, 3 hours and 20 minutes of doing commentary. I've noticed with these commentary runs, I start to fade out a lot around Act 8, so that's like when I hit the wall, and so the little last portion of these runs can be a bit rougher than my normal execution would suggest. The acts also get more punishing at that point as well.
I shall strike you down.
Yeah, a lot of buffs rolling. That Bloodline Ascendancy, which gives you like the minion attack speed or whatever, the Pharaoh's one, could be a lot of fun with this. Since we have like Giga Minions. Not saying I would go that, by the way, just saying it could be fun. And, you know, if you feel like you need a little extra damage, you can switch your Sand Stance to Blood Stance, but I typically just keep Sand Stance on, to be honest, because our damage is good enough. I really dislike how many random animations and immunity phases there are in this fight, and then I hate the little lingering, like, physical degen debuff. Two banes of making this fight otherwise pretty good. I will not be doing another run after this. I will be taking a break, taking my dog out for a walk or a car ride, depending, and getting some food. And I've got some videos to upload. Alright, cool. That is it for this run. Deathless. And ooh, we forgot to pick up some skill points. Never mind. What did we forget to pick up? We forgot to pick up the skill points in Act 9. Let's go pick those up real quick before the resist penalty message hits. Cool. Oh, cool. We forgot, by the way, to pick up the. We forgot to do Garukan. So we have to go kill Garukan real quick. That's fine. Alright. We'll do that fight real quick. Sorry about that. We're going to actually have to not portal out here, because otherwise we would brick our Kitava portal. It's been a long time since I forgot this one. So I lied, we didn't finish the run in under, 326 or whatever it was. We will finish this run at, I don't know, 328 something or other. Okay, pick this up, go back to the waypoint. Yep. So if anyone is interested, while we correct our mistake of skipping Garukhan, there is a VOD of me doing this same run in 2 hours and 59 minutes with minions. That has no commentary, however. Alright, let's go back to A10 Town. Go back to that area, and then we'll just put a little bit of health nodes on like we had done before, and we are all set for this run. Yeah, commentary is a bit of a debuff. Alright. Cool. We know the resist penalty message hit because we have the banner popped up and we can see the end of hunger here, and Sin will talk to us. So we finished the run in 3 hours, 28 minutes, and 19 seconds. Once we corrected the mistake of forgetting Garukhan. Overall, very happy with the run. Went smoothly. Didn't run into any major issues or deviations. A couple things had popped up that we had addressed, but you saw sort of how we adapted on the fly and we kept the pace going, and hopefully this was very informative for those of you that might be looking to play down below or another minion type of build on Guardian in the future. If you're not, generally there's also a lot of tips that are applicable here that could help. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you everyone for tuning in.